Nashon was a man of faith and decided to go walking into the waters, trusting that they would part. So he got up to his knees, and the waters had not parted. So he kept wading in up to his waist, and the waters did not part. He went up to his neck, and the waters did not part. It was only when he got to the bottom part of his nose that then God responded and the waters parted. There is a great Yiddish saying, be a Nashonite. I've got the pronunciation wrong, but you get the concept. And so I'm saying to every one of you, there will be no staff that will magically part the waters. It will depend on individuals and a community wading in, knee-high, waist-high, neck-high, right up to your nose. Do you think you might be going under and ready to drown? And then the way will become clear. So hold on to that and be like Nashon, and feminize the term. Nashoni might be the same, but we will be brave people. Second image comes from a delightful poet, Alain René Bozart. It comes from the poem Unsolvable Things. And I won't read or share with you the entire poem, but the last two verses have been helpful for me, and maybe also for you. So as we enter into our discernment, which will at times be a struggle and challenging, she writes, pray for protection, then, from your own hesitation, so that you do not miss the moment of grace when it comes to you. And pray also to be delivered from your own aggression, so that you do not kill this fragile, vincible grace when it floats over to you like a pearl on sea foam. Then simply keep moving. Stay alive by moving along the rhythms of rest and discovery, and be brave in any event. Every choice you make holds its own secret for redemption. Let me repeat that. Every choice we make holds its own secret for redemption. So pray for the protection from hesitation, from subtle aggression, so that we individually and as a court do not miss the moments of grace when they come to us, sometimes floating as delicately as a pearl on sea foam. Keep moving along with the rhythms of, yes, rest and discovery. Be brave, and remember that every choice we make holds its own secret for redemption. Finally, at your table, in your hands, make sure that you have your prayer fish close by, and perhaps also the gift of the tobacco. And when the discussion feels confused, or when it feels like it is not quite in accordance where you might be and you want to wave a blue card wildly while your neighbors are waving the orange, hold on to the fish, hold on to sacred tobacco, and offer yourself to be open to the Spirit, so that truly what we are about is not just making decisions about internal structural transformation, but what we're really about is finding ways to open skylight, to let extravagant sky come in and hold surprise wide open. What we're really about is trying to find the wineskin that holds the wine of new life. That's what we're about. The wine, the Spirit, the life the hope of God that is embodied in us, I'll stop. I've got another sermon or two in my back pocket, but hold on to the fish and the tobacco.
Mr. Moderator? Mr. Moderator?
I knew that voice.
I seem to have lost my wig and my hat, but I have something to say. I have a sense that you and I feel something similar. For here's the deal. I'm absolutely certain that Jordan Cantwell is going to be a magnificent moderator. Woo! But you work, and 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 you just about get to the point where you're good at your job, and they boot you out. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And it's, I'm looking for a word. It's it's an abomination, actually. And I have to say, this is the last straw, and this is the last you're going to see of me.
Oh, and you know, I'm going to miss you. Friends, microphone 3. I love the hat.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The force be with you. I may be a fool for Christ in this hat that's going to give me hat head all day. But as we do our work today, remember, be wisdom, sagesse. There is no try. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Friends, I invite us now to turn to page 12 of our sessional report. You will recall that yesterday, after much discussion, we made a decision that as we looked at matters of ministry and personnel, we would prefer to follow the outline offered to us by the sessional committee, while at the same time having the College of Ministers report in another hand, saying it might be added to, or it might inform, or it might find itself partially included. And so we are now looking at page 12, where the sessional committee says, take no action on CRTG 4, and instead we recommend that the GC establish a National Office of Vocation as a permanent feature of the denominational structure. And they walk through the responsibilities and have further outline in the participation right through 12 to the top of 13. And I would like to open discussion now, in a moment, on this matter. And just so that we get ourselves rolling, because this is an early start, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes of table time, and we'll be looking at the material on 12 on the top of 13. Are you ready to say, yes, we can go with this? Are you wanting to say, yes, but I want to add a few things from other material, or I want to delete a few things? So take a look at your table group. How are you feeling? What do you need to change or add so that you could support this? You have 4 or 5 minutes just to get us going. I want that. But whoops.
vocation would not be in and of itself establishing standards for training, etc., but rather overseeing the implementation according to denominational standards.
Would you have a suggested word addition to that first phrase, establish standards of training for accreditation personnel, with something that catches that?
I would, sir. For consistency, why not raise the terms according to denominational policy that's used in the second section when looking at regional council?
Yes. Do people follow that? Participating in the according to denominational policy, and that would be added to the top part as well, just to be clear.
Yes.
I'm going to ask, are you warm to that or cool? I'm seeing almost completely warm. Done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Kate Crawford from London Conference. I'm speaking on behalf of Table 16. We liked the idea of a College of Ministers because it provided a kind of arm's length, impartial, national oversight body. And so in appreciation for that suggestion from the comprehensive review, we feel that the Office of Vocations can provide a very similar function, and we're prepared to support that with a couple of suggestions. That under the regional council section, the last two bullets, admitting ministers from other denominations and readmitting ministers be removed from the regional council level and lifted up to the denominational level. We as a table felt that that was an undue burden to put on a regional council, and that those functioning at the national level would be able to accumulate both experience and wisdom in evaluating the credentials of those arriving from both other denominations and even other countries. So we'd like to recommend that.
Okay, could pause.
Do I get another 60 seconds,
You
sir?
will. The clock is now on hold.
Okay.
Because I hear that as a significant shift of taking the bottom two on the bottom of page 12, admitting ministers from other denominations and readmitting ministers, and saying, rather than place that in the regions, the suggestion that's coming is that it go back up to the national level, to this vocational, the Office of Vocation. Are you warm to that idea, or cool? Mostly warm, and I'll say that's where it will go. So those two are now going to go up to where you suggested. Now you have another little chunk of time for your second point. Thank you for my being able to intrude.
You're very good, sir. Thank you. The second piece refers to the College of Ministers document on Plenary 22. We really valued and appreciated Section C governance, in which it was stipulated that an equal number of ministers, whether ordained, diaconal, or designated lay, and lay people serve in this capacity. So we wanted to hold that up, that the Office of Vocations be deliberately peopled, not only with staff persons, but with those who offer themselves to assist that office, be clearly divided between those in ordered ministry and lay. We also wanted to lift up the bullet point on Plenary 23, ensuring representation from Aboriginal ministries. Felt that was very important as well.
Oh, okay, that's a fair chunk of information. It's not available to us right away. Do you have a succinct way of making a suggestion? Because again, we're looking at something quite important.
Well, you asked us to have both documents open.
Yes.
So Plenary 22, the bottom bullet, equal number of ministers, whether ordained. And then top of 23, the second bullet, ensuring representation of Aboriginal ministries. Bring those two bullets from Plenary 22 and 23 and put them in where the denominational Office of Vocations is being discussed.
Okay, thank you. Let's hold on that and be patient elsewhere while we deal with this. I'm going to ask our Nora to speak to it.
Just to make a comment that we might want to be careful about being too strict on that, because if we're talking about an office, it's a smaller thing than the body that was envisioned under the college, and so you're working perhaps with, 4 or 5 or 6 people rather than a larger body, and it might be harder to be quite so rigid, but you might want to lift up those principles.
Yes, I think the court has already expressed a desire to stay within our Reformed tradition in which both lay and clergy work together.
So, are folks clear? What we're hearing is that the item of how the Office of Vocation would be not just staff, but would be embodied, that there would be an equal number of ordained, diaconal designated, ordered, and lay people. That's item 1. I'm going to test the court. Are you clear on what we're being asked? Are you warm to the idea of making sure that there's an equal balance of lay and ordered, however this office gets established? Few blues, but by and large, we are warm to that. Okay, thank you. Now, you had another word that detailed it a bit more. I heard the word Aboriginal or Indigenous there.
Yes, taking once again from the comprehensive review, plenary 23, the second bullet at the top of the page, ensuring representation of Aboriginal ministries.
Okay, so that on the constitution or the construction or the bringing together of this office, there would be Aboriginal representation. Are you warm to that idea or cool? We are warm to it. It will go in.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a sneaky way to get more than 60 seconds, to have 3 points. Thank you. Number 3.
Heather Leffler, Hamilton Conference. I'm wondering if what we've just been talking about is a committee, like a permanent committee that works alongside the office, so similar to what we have now in different areas of the church. So it's not the office itself that has the lay and the order, that you have the small group of staff, but you have the committee that informs.
I would like to take that under advisement, under implementation. I think you're right. I don't know whether it would be a perm committee, it would be something separate, but yes, helpful. Microphone 5. Sorry for the delay. I keep missing 5.
Adam Hanley from Hamilton Conference. I would add a suggestion as we're asking the Office of Vocations to maintain lists. I would suggest that it maintain a list of those trained for the Ministry of Supervision.
Okay. So we have a list here of trained conflict and interim, and you're saying of?
Those trained for the Ministry of Supervision, as is shared in proposal M and O16 in the sessional part.
Just hold on that. So I'm going to test. Are we warm to that, to add to that, or cool to that? We are warm to that. It will go in. Thank you.
I had 2 more points from table 40. We were worried if this discipline was going to be done by staff, so it's good, I think, to hear that it's going to be overseen by representatives. And in reminding us of our discussion yesterday of some worry that the worry of colleagues overseeing and disciplining each other, it's good to see that the discipline will be separated from the support.
That's excellent. So you're saying they're covered, no changes needed, but you're affirming our previous conversation about lay ordered and saying you're seeing the split between support and discipline is now embodied. Excellent. Where are we? Microphone 2, please.
Blair Patterson, Montreal and Ottawa Conference. Moderator, I'm a little concerned that we are removing discipline in any shape from the Regional Council. I'm no fan of discipline by my judicatory. However, I also know that while it is uncomfortable to have to deal with the discipline of friends and colleagues that we may know, that is where trust is built, is at that level. And I guess I would suggest, and I'm just going to put this out there, that the bullet number 4 under responsibilities for the Office of Vocation would read the formal discipline of ministry personnel, and that informal discipline would be held at the regional level.
Okay. Are people clear? You're seeing that it's the 4th bullet that says discipline of ministry personnel, and you'd like to put the formal discipline, but informal, happen at regional council. Is that right, Blair?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to test, are you warm or cool to that?
Okay.
You're cool, by and large. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to test. Appreciate that. Microphone 4. Well, let's just do 3, then we'll do 4 and 5, so I can have some sense of my own order. 3.
Cathy Hamilton, Synode Montréal et Ottawa. J'ajouterais après le mot Aboriginal et des ministères francophones. C'est très important qu'il y a des gens qui peuvent travailler en français dans cet nouvel office. Et il y a des lois qui sont différentes au Québec. Il faut vraiment avoir une présence de la vie francophone. It's very important that there be French representation in this group because the laws in Quebec are different, and it is important that there be French presence. I would like to see that word added.
Okay. So you can see by the quick addition of the yellow, equal number of blah, blah, and Aboriginal ministries and Francophone ministries. So are you warm to that, to having the Francophone ministries included? We are completely warm to that. Thank you very much. That's there. Number 4, please.
Paul Browning, London Conference. I'm wondering whether the court would be warm to adding a bullet. It was up there just a second ago.
We don't know what bullet you're talking about.
Well, it was up there just a second ago. Anyway, it's provide funding partnerships with United Church educational and leadership learning centers and theological colleges.
What does this mean, actually? Okay, could you clarify a little bit? It doesn't sound like it's overseeing or supporting ministry personnel. It sounds more like funding, so I'm at a loss, Paul.
All right, so I didn't see it anywhere else, and I saw that there were responsibilities for this group to establish standards for accreditation and for continuing education formation and professional development. So that whole expertise in setting standards and leadership development and all that kind of stuff, that's why we suggested the bullet go here. If there's some better place for it, that's fine too, but we didn't see it any place with regard to the national structure.
I'm willing to test this, but I would also recommend you might search through, because the minute you put in something like funding partnership, you've got a very different concept floating in the air, it seems to me.
I'm
But
open to
let's
putting
have it up
anywhere
there.
else, yeah.
Put it up there, please, again on the screen. And the question is, are you warm to adding this phrase in the list of under responsibilities of providing, okay, we're cool to this idea, but the concept, important, please keep a look and find and read through, see where else it might come in.
I'm open to suggestions from the business table or somewhere.
Please talk to them. That would be great. Number 5.
Bill McCausland, Bay of Quinte Conference. At our table group in number 7, one of the things we wanted to raise was that under the interim ministries, one of the challenges that we have is the recruitment and funding of training for interim ministries. It's a great challenge across our church. We have less than 25% of the personnel we need in this area, so that we thought that this really needed to be raised in this discussion. Thank you.
So do you have a suggestion for it?
It's a funding thing that really is just sort of the nitty-gritty part, but we wanted to raise it here.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you're absolutely right, particularly in these changing times, so that will be noted and may well be part of how we implement and ensure we have those. Microphone 2.
Karen Cowell, Toronto Conference. In the first bullet, they talk about standards for training and accreditation. I haven't heard much about accreditation. I'm familiar with healthcare and accreditation, and it's a fairly lengthy process. I was wondering if the Sessional Committee had put any thought into how the process of accreditation would look.
No. I just heard a no from them, and I'm wondering if accreditation would be part of the details. I mean, we have a fairly thorough accreditation process, whether it's competency-based or candidacy level. Would you be willing to live with saying, flag it, ensure that it's followed, but it will be part of the details?
Yes,
Thank you very much for raising that. Appreciate that. Microphone 3.
John Young, Bay of Quinte Conference. I have a question for clarification. And this may have been covered yesterday afternoon when I was in and out of the court from time to time, but when I read this, I thought I had in mind, this was basically a small office. This was essentially I was thinking more some of our general counsel staff putting things, for want of a better word, on paper, maintaining records, et cetera, around policies that had already been developed. As the discussion's gone on, it seems to me as if we're more establishing a committee and moving into policy things, just as I'm listening to the discussion. So I guess I may have been interpreting office in a rather secular and narrow way. So I'd like some help with that question, because it makes a difference to how I'm responding to some of the things here.
And I would just say that on the face of it, my initial interpretation, John, was similar to yours. It appears to be an office of staff. From the comments here today, I'm hearing a wish to have some broader input from whether it's a permanent committee, whether it's another form of a body, that there'd be a broader approach to it. And I would take that as directions to be considered in implementation. If somebody wanted to offer some wording to clarify that, that would be fine as well.
So do you have a follow-up? That's the clarification.
That's a very helpful clarification. It seems to me there's a significant difference. I certainly don't have wording. I could be persuaded either way. I'm wondering if we might test the will of the group to see how people are thinking about that.
Okay.
In terms of, they're very different conceptually.
Give that to me again. Okay. The question that we're looking at is whether this would be a small group primarily of staff, or whether it would be some form of an elected body, whether we call it a committee, a permanent committee, a something, but that it would clearly include lay people and clergy balanced, not just staff. Is that?
Yeah, that summarizes the question quite well, because I guess I was assuming it was small office. Those other policies, et cetera, were developed according to our procedures in other groups. And so, yes, that's helpful.
Okay. There is somebody at mic 3 from Sessional Committee that may offer clarification.
Yeah, just to say that, speaking for myself on the Sessional Committee, my sense from the proposals we received was not that it would necessarily be a small office of staff. I don't know what it would be, but that my sense is something, the suggestions were something similar to the college in terms of involvement of others, not just staff.
Okay. So I'm going to test the will of the court so that we get a sense. Are you warm or cool to the idea that this office of National Office of Vocation is, in fact, one that has an elected body with it? Are you warm or cool to that? We are warm to that, so that it will not just be staff, there'll be some kind of nominated elected committee that involves clergy and lay that would be part of that. Size, detail, that's implementation, but the concept is clear. Microphone. And could the business table please capture that in some phrasing that will go in our final document that we will vote on? Thank you very much. Microphone 4.
Thank you, Moderator. Jim Ball from Hamilton Conference. It seems the deeper we go into this, we're talking about a couple of things. The first is, what is this group going to do? And the second is, how does it need to be composed so that we can trust it? And it seems we're developing 3 kinds of buckets. The first is categories to be represented on it, and in what percentages. The second is it needs appropriate expertise, and the third is it needs appropriate experience. The issue of trust, I think, relates to all 3 buckets and not just the categories of representation. I met with a friend who's a pastor in the United States, 34-year-old pastor. His existential crisis recently was that he was turning 35. And I asked him, what's troubling you about that? He said, I no longer understand 22 to 25-year-olds. I'm too far distant from the experience. And so the issue isn't just experience of a general kind, but active experience. So I turn it to the business committee or whoever's looking at the detailed work, implementation work, that active experience and what it's like at the front line of communities of faith and the new things we're creating, so that existential experience that's current is being woven into the evaluative exercise.
Okay, Jim, I'm going to cut you off, but I want to say that's a helpful comment, and I think we will just say, business committee, be aware, and it's part of how we pull this together. Active experience is a crucial part of it. Microphone 5.
Douglas Sloan, Synode Montréal Ottawa. And I would just like to say what the comments made earlier about interim ministry could also be said about supervision. Some of our smallest constituencies and specialized ministries could also benefit from having those recommendations implemented. So I just like that noted for implementation, that we could include supervision.
Helpful comment, thank you. I don't think we need to test it, but it goes for information for implementation. I think we missed microphone 1 as I'm whipping through, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. 1.
Matthew, London Conference. First of all, I need to say I'm very encouraged that John Young had a question, because now I feel I'm in good company. Because it seems to me that we're backing into a college under another name, point by point. And I thought before we slide all the way down and the final is let's change the name, maybe we ought to rethink this whole thing just a little bit, because we're going to wind up going through this boilerplating point by point.
Well, thank you for your comment. Number 2.
James Ravenscroft, Alberta Northwest Conference. Moderator, I simply seek some clarity in regard to the speaker, several speakers ago. I simply need to make sure that when we move the admitting and readmitting piece to the Office of Vocations, we simply mean process, and we don't accidentally disconnect the celebration of admissions and readmissions at the regional council level.
Helpful clarification. My reading would be we're talking about the process of it, with knowing we need national expertise. The celebration would absolutely happen.
Okay,
that will
thank
be
you.
my reading.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Number 3, please.
Shirley Cleve, Permanent Committee of Governance and Agenda, and that was my point specifically, that we have created an inconsistency with that movement of those. So I think it needs to go back there, and I have some suggested wording for embedding under responsibilities. That would be helpful. Establish standards and procedures for admitting ministers from other denominations and readmitting ministers, and the desk has that. But put back the celebration, because we have ordained, license, recognize.
Okay, my only thought is it's more than just establishing standards, it's actually
And procedures.
implementing them.
Well, we've used established standards for training, like we've just used, that's the same language as we have in all of them. Like establish standards for training and accreditation, establish expectations. So establish and implement, if you like. Establish and implement standards and procedures.
So if you, okay, I'm a little, does this change the concept?
Well, it names the fact that somebody has to admit and readmit those two categories of ministers under responsibilities of the denomination, and it returns the celebration to admitting and readmitting back to licensing, ordaining, commissioning.
Okay. So what we've added as a possibility is adding under the regional council responsibility, celebration, I can't see, of admissions and readmissions. Would
That's
that
fine.
meet your point?
Right, it's not consistent, but it gets the message across.
Okay, let me test the will of the court. Are you warm to having that celebration part in the regional council and being sure that we know that? Warm, point taken. It may need some slight rewording, but the concept is clear. Thank you very much. Number 4.
Paul Douglas Walfall, Caribbean person. It is not to test the will of the court, sir, but under the...
Speak into the mic, please, Paul.
Under the categories that we had for whatever committee, permanent committee or group of persons overseeing the Office of Vocations, if we could go back to that part of the slide, could I ask that in our implementation, we be sensitive to ensure that ethnic minorities are also represented somewhere in that process?
Okay. So could we go back to that part that had Indigenous and Francophone, wherever that was? Okay. So you're suggesting that under that ensuring representation from Aboriginal, Francophone, also ethnic?
Ethnic minorities.
Ethnic minorities. Are we warm to having that phrase in there, ethnic minorities? Okay, thank you very much. It's in, but Danielle is our intercultural observer, commenter. Please, microphone 3.
Thank you, moderator. It's good to be with you, Church. I have been hearing over the past 48 hours concern about and reflection about the layering and naming of specific groups. Remember, Church, that interculturality is more about a way of being with the appropriate lenses, looking at dynamics of proportional representation, of power, inclusivity, equity, justice. All of these things are embedded in our language of interculturalism. It's large, and it's about the way that we all are together. Sometimes we begin to think about the clans that are within the whole family. And that has a propensity to move us toward lobbying and advocacy and, the specificity of saying, I do or I do not see myself there. I would encourage the court to trust the intercultural lens and the intercultural way of being. With that said, I wonder if throughout this document that we're developing, we might consider the simplicity of language that simply states, when we come to these kinds of moments, to honor and live into the intercultural mission and ministry. And what that does possibly is allow for your trust to go to those persons then who will take on that integrated, embodied sense of the lens and ask themselves who is here, who is not here, who needs to be here, and beyond. Again, the language I'm suggesting is to honor and live into the intercultural mission and ministry.
Even before I ask, I'm seeing a host of warm cards. The question for me would be then, do you want to eliminate ensuring representation from Aboriginal, Francophone, and ethnic and replace it with the phrase that Danielle has offered, or just simply add
I would like to just speak to that.
Thank you.
So it's not only at this point, I'm thinking throughout the document, other places where we name this layering, and if the court would trust the leadership to do that, I think the intercultural lens would take seriously representation in this case. The other thing I would want to say is that to use that language and maybe to asterisks, a note back to the full articulation of the intercultural vision from the document from 2010. There, everyone is listed. Have no fear. So to go back to that, so we have a reference point where we have carefully crafted articulation of the expansiveness of the vision and who is there and the space for who we are yet to honor and notice and welcome.
So you'd almost be suggesting like after live into the intercultural mission and ministry brackets with reference to whatever the name of that document is.
Yes, and I have given the business table that particular language.
Friends, are you warm to then taking out the specifics and putting this in, knowing we will reference the document that actually names? We are warm to that. And then I would suggest that, I think I heard Danielle say, all throughout the document, when we start adding the categories, we instead use this phrasing with the reference back. Is that true?
Yes, thank you.
And would you be warm to that? Or cool to that, sorry. Yes, we are warm to that. Thank you, though. Now, I'm about to move to another mic, but Keith, Danielle, quick.
Moderator, my apologies. Please repeat.
Do you have anything else?
Do you have anything else?
Thank you.
No.
And I appreciate that. Nobody at microphone 4, microphone 5.
Moderator Moses Canhigh, Saskatchewan Conference. If I may underline what Danielle said, as I read throughout the workbook, I saw numerous references to various diverse groups needing to be included in different parts of the regional council and other things. And it concerned me, and I was about to raise the exact point, that we need a mechanism that can embrace all of these without listing them, because almost certainly we will be leaving out some groups as well. However, we also need to be cognizant of the word at the top of that bullet point of equal numbers, so that that does not necessarily mean that we will need equal numbers of those groups.
Okay. Thank you
So
very much.
We need to underline the word balanced.
Balance. Okay. But that's in there, isn't there? Isn't it? Are you actually asking that a word be added, or are you just saying for reference and information? Thank you very much. Microphone 2.
Ken Delisle, Conference of Manitoba, Northwestern Ontario. Under this section, the regional council shall be responsible for, I'm suggesting, and after licensing of licensed lay worship leaders, there be another line. I don't care what verb, I do care, but I don't want to, or the verb, but something for sacramental elders, acknowledging the sacramental elders.
So, licensing of licensed lay worship leaders and accepting sacramental elders. Something like that.
Yep.
Okay. Are you clear what's being asked? Are you warm to that idea? Or cool to that idea? I'm seeing a number of cards not up, but we're primarily warm to that. So somehow sacramental elders will be phrased in there. Microphone 3.
Thank you, moderator. Martha Turkile from Toronto Conference. Just to help us move toward the clarity that we're seeking, I wonder if I think where we've gone wrong is that in this saying that the General Council will establish a national office, we've actually gone to implementation. And I think what the intention has been is that the General Council, actually we should probably call it the Denominational Council in this document, will do these things, which is the first one, establish standards, establish expectations, skip the third one, then go to discipline of ministry. That's who's going to do it. And the way they're going to do it is through the establishment of an office. And I think if we state it that way, then it becomes clear. And then the establishment of the office has all of these things that we've added to it, so that we differentiate between what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Okay. So your suggestion would be to eliminate the phrase, establish a national office of vocation as a permanent feature of the denom structure. Is that right?
Think what we could do is say that the denominational council will, as number one, let's just take the three very simple pieces: establish the standards for training and accreditation, establish the expectations and standards for continuing ed and formation, and discipline of ministry. Because those are the things that the college was going to do.
Okay.
Through the establishment of an office, which will, boom, boom, boom.
Okay. I'm going to do a testing of that, because you're right, it's implementation, though some may feel that having it in there offers a clarity that helps the direction. So are you warm to the suggestion you've heard from the speaker at microphone, or are you cool? You are very mixed. I'm going to rule that we hold to what is, but I would like to take that under advisement that in fact we've slid into a bit of implementation. Microphone 5, please.
Moderator Shelley Manley-Tanis from Manitoba, Northwestern Ontario. I would just like to reflect on the bigger picture, which I'm not always known for doing, so I'm surprised right now. But what my experience in the last few days as being a commissioner in the Partridgeberry session and hearing the discussion around one order of ministry, listening to the reports and the historical outline that was shared with us of about 90 years of struggling with definitions and understandings of ministry. And all of these things have been referred back, or I know we haven't made a decision on one order, but the discussion was really sounding like we need more discussion. We need more time. Partridgeberry said the same thing. about...
I'm just going to interrupt. You've hit your time. I'll give you a little bit more, but you need to get right
Okay.
to the point.
Okay. So the competencies, the one order of ministry, the discussion about the college or association, it's all part of the same discussion, and it sounds to me like the court is saying we need more of this and we need to focus, and if we could do that, we don't need to do it all on the floor right here today.
Okay, I hear you. I think what is happening here is trying to focus on a major aspect of that, but thank you for the reminder. Microphone 2.
Leanne Hogel, Synode de Montréal et Ottawa. A few motions back, there was a discussion about discipline of ministry and making sure that that was held at the denominational level. And I'd just like to remind the court, it's our understanding at table 16 that we did leave informal conflict resolution at the regional council level. I believe we discussed that yesterday. Is that correct?
That twigs a memory, though it's getting fuzzy at this stage in the council, so I wouldn't trust it, but I think you're right, and so your point would be...
Well, from the conversation, it sounded like the person making that motion was trying to assure there was no oversight of ministry at the regional level, but there appears to be. It appears that we have already decided there would be some kind of informal conflict resolution.
Could I ask you to stay at the mic? We'll continue with other discussion. I'm going to ask somebody at business table or more knowledgeable than I to quickly check up on that. Good point. So don't leave, but microphone 3 while we're trying to find that part.
Kenji Marui, London Conference. I'm not sure I'm at the correct microphone if we were using that format anymore or not, but
not
I'm
at the
just
moment.
Speaking. I have a concern on the sessional report to page 12 under the responsibilities of the regional council with regard to the National Office of Vocation. The third point of determining the person's fitness and readiness for accreditation to ministry. I would really like to see that conducted by one body that has access to all the information. What I wish to see coming out of the comprehensive review was that we no longer have 86 different education and students committees applying policies unevenly, or that we would have however many regional councils would be applying it unevenly for the fear of one region being played against another. And so I would like that to be housed within one place.
Okay. I'm going to do a test of the will of the court on this. I think the question would not be 86 because we're saying regional councils.
Yes, but multiple places can be like a kid going to...
But multiple places as opposed to one.
Yes.
So however many regional councils, you'd rather see it moved up to the actual national office.
Well, I would like to see it centralized or, placed in one place.
When I say national office, I mean the Office of Vocation or however we structure it. Okay, so you're hearing the concept. Instead of saying the third point, determining person's fitness and readiness for accreditation to ministry, instead of being lodged with regional council, it would be lodged at the National Office of Vocation. Are you warm or cool to that? I'd say there's significant enough cool to keep it as it is. It's mixed, and my sort of rule of thumb is if it's that mixed, I leave it as it is. Thank you, though, for that point, and we could maybe just hold that as a concept and think, okay. Microphone 5, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sybil Wilson, Hamilton Conference. This is a request. Before you bring us to the point where we have to decide on this proposal, I wonder if you could describe somebody, maybe the General Secretary, could describe the bird for us. Because right now, I don't know whether we're talking about chicken, duck, or turkey.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. I'm doing my best, but it gets confusing. I'll try, with the help of our General Secretary, to be more clear and give a little more breathing time. It may feel like I'm rushing. I am aware of the clock ticking, but thank you. Microphone 2.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Maish, Hamilton Conference.
I'm glad that 45 years ago, when my mother became a single parent, the United Church of Canada was not there to tell her she had to choose either to support or discipline me, because I don't know how it would have turned out otherwise. So maybe we could just table all of this and find some parents somewhere who've raised children and ask them how they do it.
Thank you very much. Microphone 3.
Linda Moffat, Maritime Conference. It seems to me in the first part, the responsibilities being defined for this national office, we have two things going on. One view of the office is that it's a set of staff who are maintaining a register, essentially. There's another big element of the responsibilities, which relate to establishing standards and policies regarding the whole issue. And I'm wondering if that's part of our problem, that we want to make sure that the policies are being established by the executive or by the general council or by an advisory board, and they're being implemented by the staff in the office, and if that might remove some of the concerns about the scope of this office.
Good point. My understanding is that one of our earlier speakers raised that, and we put in according to denominational policy, so that we said right at the beginning it's the denomination itself that is going to establish all of these policies, and that this office is for implementation.
Okay, so this office then reports directly up to the executive, or does it report to one of the committees?
So I think that what was agreed on was that there won't be clarity today as to the exact structure, but that there would be an elected body that they're reporting to, some way related to the executive.
Good.
Okay. And I think I might just add that may partly address the concerns raised by the previous speaker of 12 different sets of standards, or however number of regional councils we have, that there will be, in fact, a denominational policy that will be set.
Right. And with regard to that second part, I'm wondering if we would say that the regions make recommendations to this body rather than determine the individual's fitness. They make recommendations to this body with regard to the fitness.
Well, hold on. That's a whole new point that's being raised. But I think we've already decided to leave that with the region, knowing that there would be denominational policy, but the region would work on that. Okay, microphone 4. And I'm going to just say we're having an excellent discussion. I'm wondering if we're getting close to the end of what we need to say, but I'm not sure. So certainly people standing up, we're hearing from you. Microphone 4.
Sue Browning, London Conference. I don't know if this would be helpful for folks to know, but in the Partridge Berry Commission, we did approve the candidacy pathways recommendations, and that states that there'll be a candidacy admissions board at every region. That's part of the recommendations. So I guess that helps alleviate anxiety or stress from me that this piece will have to be done at both the regional and the denominational level, because the regions are going to know the people, right? The regions will know them as not just their paperwork, but as their faces. And so I think that the dance between the denomination and region, we have to kind of trust that and let that evolve a little bit.
Thank you. And it's helpful to have the reference back to some of the other work that has been happening. So just to be reminded of that. Thank you very much. Microphone 2, please.
Heather Sandylands, Manitoba Northwestern Ontario Conference. One of the things I'm concerned about the way the discussion is going, and I appreciate the word trust, but in conversations that we've had in our presbytery, many lay people do not trust that as ministers we are capable or willing to discipline one another. So I'm a little concerned that we're going away from that idea that was in the comprehensive review around the college giving us enough arm's length. The second question is related, and it's a meta question, it's not an implementation, and that's about funding. My experience of professional colleges is that the membership funds it through professional dues, and I don't know what would happen or how this would be funded if it's part of the denominational structure rather than as a separate structure. So I just raised that up. I'd like to have that conversation too.
I'll just say that under either version, whether the comprehensive review or this, I don't think it was ever the thinking that the members would be funding the cost of the college process. That would be part of the responsibility of the broader church.
Thank you. So we're still waiting for a little clarity on the issue raised by number 2 about informal discipline that we left in regions, so I'm still aware of that. Meanwhile, I'll recognize microphone 5 because I don't think we're getting close. Microphone 5.
Moderator, Connie Butt, All Native Circle. To me, this all sounds like it's colonization all over again. I thought we were trying to make all things new.
Okay, thank you very much. So keep that lens in mind, folks. Do we have information on I see the co-chair of the business committee going to microphone 1. Microphone 1, please. Microphone 1. Could you go to microphone 3 at the moment, please, Fred? Hold on to your ears, folks.
Thank you, moderator. Yes, indeed, informal conflict resolution appears in the oversight of ministry personnel and the second bullet point on Sessional Committee Report 7 under regional councils, under regional.
Can you give me the page reference? Sessional Report
7.
Page 7. Where? We haven't dealt with page 7 yet.
Thank you.
So what it was is the sessional committee had some identical wording on page 12, 13, and back on page 7. We're working through it on page 12, and we were just about to get to 13. And I think then the thought was that when we go back to page 7, we won't have to do it over again because it's pretty much the same.
Okay. So what that raises at this point is that within what we're looking at, page 12, over to the top of 13, the phrase informal conflict resolution processes is there. There is a potential for saying that's in conflict with having a complete separation between supervision and support, or accountability and support. So I'm looking for some comment and clarification. I recognize microphone 2.
Moderator Ross Bartlett, Maritime Conference, also a member of the Sessional Committee, to attempt to clarify our thinking. We realize that both in the Reformed and the Methodist structures of being church, the mutual support and oversight of colleagues is an important question, and we had difficulty if a colleague in the next pastoral charge hears of some difficulty in my pastoral charge and takes me out for coffee and says, Ross, what can you, let's think about what you're up to here. Is that oversight or is that support? The reality is that in Maritime Conference, our personnel officer saves the church literally tens of thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars by addressing small brush fires before they become major conflagrations. As far as we were concerned, it is the formal hearings, the formal reviews that are beyond the general competency of both lay and ministry personnel, and it was those things that we wanted to be done by a consistent pool of trained individuals. We did not want to remove any possibility of assisting one another, which is what, despite some of the definitions given yesterday, we see oversight as being. We see oversight as being supportive of one another as we grow into joy and health in the ministry of the whole church.
Okay. Court, I am going to test this, and then in the light of our previous comment, let me draw attention. It is at the top of page 13. Yes, it occurs earlier, but we're addressing the top of page 13. We are saying that under the responsibilities of the regional council, under the section of oversight of ministry personnel, there is this phrase, informal conflict resolution processes. We've heard from the speaker at Mic 2, Ross Bartlett, that what was had in mind was they take a colleague out for coffee saying, I hear there are some problems, or I've heard via grapevine, how's it going? That the formal hearings would go up to the national, these informal connections would stay at the region. So the question is going to be, are you warm to keeping this phrase in? If so, in, otherwise blue, we are warm. So we are recognizing the gift of the informal resolution processes as distinct from formal discipline and oversight. Thank you for raising that point, and thank you for clarification. I am seeing no one else at the mics. I'm going to give us now 2 or 3 minutes in table time, and then I'm going to ask the will of the court to say yay to the revised document that we have made on the, whatever we're calling it, National Office of Vocation, with all the changes. Could we make sure that we sort of scroll through this changed document and do it 2 or 3 times slowly? And you're going to have 5 minutes in well, I'm going to say 3 minutes, but it'll end up 5. So think of 3 minutes, but have a conversation. Do you like what we've done? And are you going to be willing in a few minutes to say amen? You look puzzled. No, you're okay. Just giving you another minute or so to wrap up your conversations, and then I'm going to test the will of the court. So friends, I would like you to finish up your conversation and please bring your attention and focus to the larger circle. At this point, unless it's a procedural motion or concern or clarification, I would rather not have voices from the mic, because I think we've had a conversation, but is that what this is about, microphone 4? Or if it's just another comment on the overall concept, I'd rather test the will. I'm not trying. Thank you. Okay.
Microphone 2?
Microphone 2.
Kathy Lyman from London Conference. I just want to say that the last couple of years in London, we've been implementing the effective leadership. And we kind of jumped into it without everything being nailed down. And we worked on it as we went along. And we figured it out as we went. So we didn't have it all nailed down first. We kind of jumped in with it half-formed. It was a case of learning to trust and work with the system. And I'm saying that to the court now as saying we may not have everything nailed down, but have we got enough there that we think we can work on as we go along?
Thank you very much. Microphone 2, and then I'm going to recognize 4, because if I've done 1 and 3, you get it 2. And then friends, that's it. 3?
Yes, moderator. Hugh Johnson, Alberta Northwest. The one thing I would note is what was scrolled through had no reference to the ethnic ministry comments. That people recognize that should be incorporated in these comments.
My understanding, Hugh, is saying using our intercultural perspective with reference to the past, we actually have listed ethnic ministry within that, and that we took out categories of Aboriginal, Francophone, and ethnic on the full understanding that they're there.
Okay, thank you.
And we will spell that out in the final document, but that it's clear, without listing, it is definitely in. And that's my I don't know if a moderator rules or says it's my understanding, but it's there, folks. Number 4, you get your chance.
Thank you. It's Carolyn Smith from Hamilton Conference. For some reason, I didn't see the deck chairs shuffling around coming. I didn't see it. So we're sitting here working on this, and I'm wondering, how is this different from our existing process? We changed the stickers on the door from personnel ministers to Office of the Vocation. We squished the Presbytery Conference roles together. How is the experience of a congregation or a in trouble going to change when they go and ask somebody and they're dealing with people who are shuffling through papers and trying to do the best they can in busy lives, and it's not as professionalized as I thought it was going to be? And what's the difference between what we're working on right now and what's existing already? Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. So, court, I am going to ask you in a moment, are you feeling warm or cool to the whole section we have just been working on this morning which is in a sense, the replacement of CRTG 4 of the Sessional Committee. Are you warm or cool? You are almost universally warm to that, with a couple of people expressing coolness. So I would say that we have affirmed that. Well done. Because now I take you back to page 7, for we are working through the responsibilities of the regional council. And if you look at page 7, you'll notice a huge amount at the top crossed out, and then a number of items that are underlined: participating in preparation and pastoral relations and oversight. What we have just done is a full replacement for all that material. So all of that will go out, and what we have worked on through the Sessional Committee will replace it. They are almost identical word for word. In fact, they are, but we have significant changes, and my belief, do not need to work on that, and we've done this work. And so at this moment, I'm asking you to look at the very bottom of page 7, participation in denominational life, and receiving, and over the page, receiving, dealing with, and forwarding on proposals. I would like to point out that because we have made a decision that communities of faith will not be electing members to the denominational council, somebody's got to do it. And so what this says, in fact, the regional councils will do it. Doesn't say necessarily how, but that they will do it and be the body responsible for it. I don't know if we need table time on this, but I'm not sure I'm going to discourage people unless they have points to raise that add to our wealth of information. Are you warm, then, Court, to saying yes to the electing members on the denominational council, or are you cool? And that whole section, sorry, over the page. We're warm. Okay. So turn the page. We are on page 8 of the sessional report. We are at D, limitations. I ask you now just to take a quick look at that. In fact, well, do they need table time? I don't think you need time for that. There's not much difference from what we've already done. We've added the candidacy ministry personnel, which we've already agreed on. They've eliminated terms of covenant, which we have already agreed on. And this is the place where you will authorize then the denominational council can actually move in with the regional council, just as we agreed that the regional council could move in onto the community. That's the wrong language, isn't it? But you know what I mean. Okay. I'm not seeing anybody at the mics. Are you warm to having the D part in as printed there, or are you cool? You are warm to it. Okay, we're moving to E. And here I think we do need to have some discussion. There are some changes here. This is saying would have the staff to assist the council, regional meeting its responsibilities. You'll notice we've added the word numbers. That simply means to me a clarification on what staffing. Next line that has been crossed out, I think we need to talk about because it changes what we at the moment are already doing. That in fact, well, I'm going to ask the General Secretary to speak to that, please.
Well, just to say that the line that's crossed out represents pretty much the current structure. As we all know, the conference executive secretaries have basically a dual reporting relationship. They're, strictly speaking, the reporting relationship is to me, and that's what makes us work as a team and work on the benefit of the whole church. But of course, they also work directly with each of their local executives. So the line that's there crossed out represents the current situation, and I don't think we've had any clarity or information as to the intent behind taking it out. So
The mics, or maybe a clarification from the sessional committee on why they eliminated that line. I'm looking for Larry, who's gone. I'm looking for number 2. Thank you very much. Ross Bartlett. No, sorry. Number 2, I recognize you.
Thank you, Moderator. Ross Bartlett, Maritime Conference, and a member of the Sessional Committee. In our Sessional Committee, we were not entirely clear that the situation is exactly as the General Secretary has described it, in that the conference staff as they currently exist are not directly hired by the Executive Secretary. They are hired in a combined fashion. And if you look further on in your documentation, and I'm sorry, which sessional committee proposal it was, we were asking for a review of the relationship between the executive secretaries and the general secretary, and a clarification of the status of the region, whether it's time conversation about a greater level of equality between the regional secretaries and the executive secretary. We are wondering whether or not those personnel who are to be retained at the regions should be considered employees of the region rather than employees of the denominational council. And so the reason we struck it out was not so that there would be no regional staff. It was because we were unclear about how the current model translates over into the new situation, and we wanted to flag it for further detailed work.
I wonder if, I don't know if this would be helpful or not, but I'm just looking at it out, and if we back up there, if it would be helpful if after the words "who reports directly to the General Secretary of the Denominational Council," if we added the words "and relates to the Regional Council Executive." Just to make it clear, what I described as the current situation, there's a formal relationship, and there's also very clearly a balance that, as I see my colleagues, they handle admirably, but it does lay out that dual relationship, and I wondered if that would be helpful.
So Nora, you are suggesting that the line be put back in, but the material of relates to regional council executive would in fact offer clarification?
Yeah. You take that semicolon out.
And the semicolon goes out. Okay, I want to have us focus on this rather than anything else that we're looking at here. Do we have comments on that? I recognize microphone 5.
I support that whole bullet with Nora's addition be there. Leave without one person at the regional level that is the connection to both the denominational level and the congregational level, that the continuity, not that we're all doing the same, but the understanding and the continuity between the 3 levels. We need one common thread, and I believe that is the common thread that has to keep us as a denomination, part of the United Church of Canada.
Microphone number 3. Oh, microphone number 2, you're going to speak to this?
Kathy Lyman from London Conference. No problem with the yellow stuff that was just added, but my understanding, and I could be wrong on this, is that the regional secretary or current conference executive secretaries do not on their own hire staff. They may manage them, but they don't hire them. I thought that went more to the conference executives.
Okay.
So I'm seeing that hiring as a change, and I'm questioning it.
Okay, okay, stay there because I'm going to ask for wording, but it looks like our General Secretary has a suggestion.
Well, and I think I'm right on this, that I guess I'm not seeing that as something that needs to be reflected. Certainly at the national level and at the regional level, when we're hiring key staff, it's done along with committees of elected. Technical thing of the actual staffing process is it that's going to go out staffing on their own. I don't anticipate that authorizing this kind of a change.
But would it be clearer if we added something, regional secretary with the executive, or with something just to clarify? Think on that.
I think you want to be careful tying it down too tightly because there's also just kind of a personnel process. So.
Okay. Microphone 3 or 4.
Alan Buckingham, Northwest Conference. Well, I don't disagree with this if we're doing council the way that we currently do things. That all makes sense. I really appreciate the Sessional Committee's recommendation that we look at it later, as I'm still hoping that we're going to do something new and we're not just going to do the same thing a little different. And if we eliminate that line the way it was before, it gives a freedom to see what a regional council might look like, because we haven't decided that yet, and maybe do things a little bit differently.
Okay. So microphone 3, and then, yeah, microphone 3, 4, and 5. And then I'm, and 1, and 2. So I'm at 3 right.
Actually, 1's been there.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just need a point of clarification from the executive secretary. There is monetary reasons why we do it, and there are social benefits why we do it the way we do. Why from the standpoint of salaries and benefits and.
Thank you. And just to say, yes, because all of the people are under the same classification or categorization session, so that there's some equality in how payments are made and how we design job descriptions. And also, of course, within our office, we have personnel staff who usually it's when there's a ticklish situation are helpful to the conference in solving matters, that kind of thing. So it's part of a bigger support infrastructure. Thank you, Richard.
Microphone 3.
And maybe hoping that we could, to some degree, untie staff from regions in the sense of thinking of each region having its own staff. As I sort of read this, I'd like to think about the concept would give us, if we thought that way, a lot more flexibility around how many regions we have to have. We know we've got limitations on staff. And so it's in some ways it's very tangential to this, but what we do with this can tie our hands. So I don't want to distract us, but
John, do you have a suggestion of phrasing? Because I think you've got to go there.
Well, I don't have a suggestion. I was concerned if what we did with this might block us from a suggestion I would then make. So, I mean, I can make a suggestion, but.
I think it's a really helpful comment, and I wouldn't see this as limiting the potential to also have national staff or denominational staff placed regionally. I see this as relating to the ones that might be particularly at the request of the region or a certain complement of regional staff, but that there might also be for example, mission staff of some kind that were placed in a certain geography, even if they were considered national. But you're right in naming that the lines become fuzzy.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Microphone 5, please.
Brian Cornelius of Montreal and Ottawa Conference. I wanted to reflect the same concern to remind us that we want to have a staffing model that is focused on services and support and not on how we're managing our bureaucracies. And so I had some concerns that we were putting into place a formal bureaucracy rather than staying focused on a staff unit working together across the country to provide support and services. So again, I think we're starting to get into the weeds, and I want to lift up the principle that I thought was in comprehensive review of really being focused in on grassroots service and support.
Okay. Friends, I don't see anybody else at the mic. I'm hearing these concerns. I would assume and hope that they're going to be part of the full expression. It is a little fuzzy, but I think I want to test, are you comfortable with the wording as it stands now in revised form, or are you cool? Basically, I see about 10, 15 cool and a couple of hundred warm. So I think we are warm to it, but I think we need to flag very carefully the comments of the last two speakers. What we want to maintain is support and service from our staff, not bureaucracy. Bureaucracy can be good. And also flexibility so that staff do not become the possession of a particular regional council, that we need room for some staff sharing and flexibility. So with those two provisos, make sure that they're in. I would say we are comfortable with that. Oh, okay. We have another hour and 15 minutes before our next item of business. I'm wondering if I could call for a song, because I'm just feeling I want to sing, because you know what? Yes, Richard.
I'm sorry, Richard Hollingsworth, Bay of Quinte. Have we not removed staffing salaries from the Mission and Service Fund? But it appears again in this line in number 1. I thought we had removed that.
No, because we're clearly going to have some staff that are doing mission work.
How are we going to fund it?
So I think just in simple terms, some staff would be funded still through mission and service, depending on the kind of work they're doing, and others would be through an assessment.
Richard, my apology for sounding short. I did not mean that. It just slips out occasionally. That's why I want music. And friends, I just want you to know, you have now walked through court number 1, communities of faith. You've walked through court number 2, regional councils. We have the final court, denominational council, or whatever we're going to call it. And a lot of that is going to just fall tickety-boo, I believe, into place because of the decisions we've made. But we're moving along, and we need a little music to celebrate and energize it, and I need to stretch.
We're gonna sing Dance with the Spirit. And you can dance seated or standing. Dance moves, the twist. Move with the Spirit early in the morning. Walk with the Spirit throughout the long day. Work and hope for a new life upon. Listen to the swim. Dance with the Spirit early in the morning. Walk with the Spirit throughout the long day. Work and hope for a new life upon. Listen for the Spirit. Freestyle.
Thanks.
Beautiful dancing.
Sorry, dear. No, I was just throwing it in, but we could do that.
Oh, blessed church, you are hardworking. You're on your final day of work. So I invite you to come back to your table. Maybe give a little massage. I see that happening at the table in front of me. I'm envious. But, you know, let's come on back. I know it's hard. I'm feeling like I'm dragging you into the more business. But we're close. We're close, folks. You have 2 or 3 key, deep, or high-level principles still to decide, and then a lot of details. No, I don't like. I do not like. So please come back to your tables and be ready for new discussion. Please, I notice we're having lots of at-the-back conversations, and I hate to be the nag. I really do. Don't make me be. Ah. Oh, she's going to do that for me. Oh, that's lovely. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Before we start in on denominational council, I am going to be conducting business while simultaneously ensuring that I am gracious and generous and recognizing microphone 3.
Oh, thank you. Jamie Weber, Montreal, Ottawa Conference. I'll just wait a moment.
We're listening.
Thank you. I've suggested a couple times that a new and very useful role for the regional council could be to promote and foster dialogue between communities of faith and the denominational council, being a mouthpiece for direct communication between the lowest court and the highest court. I'm still wondering when will be the appropriate time to bring this up. I see it as fitting in point C at the very top of page 8, right after receiving, dealing with, and forwarding on proposals from members of the community of faith to the denominational council. I'm sort of envisioning a position like a liaison officer or something.
Okay, I want to ask, what is your wording? You've chosen a place.
Mm-hmm.
We're now looking at just going back to what we've decided, but that's okay. Top of page 8, you're saying under the C section where we've said you'll choose the members for denom council, you'll receive and deal with proposals. What are you suggesting here, James?
I'm suggesting, let's see here, promoting, fostering, and facilitating, or some section of verbs. Fostering direct dialogue between representatives of communities of faith and the denominational council.
Okay, that's not where can we see that on the screen, please? So it's back up. We're back into the regional council, please. Into the regional.
Up, stop,
down.
There. Oh,
wait.
Up, one more up. Getting warmer. Getting warmer.
A little bit more slowly.
A little bit more, there we are.
Okay, right,
there,
stop.
Right above where it has the capital letter D, a final bullet point saying promoting and fostering dialogue between representatives of communities of faith and the denominational council.
Would you want to put the word representatives or between communities
between
of faith?
Communities of faith and
okay. So the phrasing would be to add to that promoting and fostering dialogue between communities of faith and the denominational council. Are you warm to that going in, or cool? By and large, you're warm. I see several blues, but so I would say that's in, and I'm not going to have us redo that section. We'll just agree that it's in there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now, back to the denominational council. And
Mike 1.
Point of order, yes.
and it is a point of order.
Yes.
Recognizing your request of the court a few moments ago, the table group talk and the talk around the sides has been growing exponentially this morning. I have trouble focusing my hearing. I hear too well is the problem. I can't take out the background noise. It's becoming very difficult to think.
Okay. So, church, we need to respect that we hear differently. And when I do call us back to focus attention to the full circle, that we keep her quiet. If you have a conversation that you need to have, then just could you take it outside the doors where it won't bother those who are needing to focus on the work. Thank you very much. Denominational council. First, we look at the description. The denominational council will be the decision-making body for the United Church as both a denomination and a legal corporation. I'm going to actually probably just ask for a quick show of are you cool or warm to each of these sections, just so we know. Are you warm to that? It's pretty straightforward, but yes, we are. Okay. Now, we're now into membership. And so, we have already said those elected by the regional councils according to an agreed-upon formula. That's in congruence with our decision not from the communities of faith, and therefore the next two lines are taken out because of that. And then they've added these typical presiding officer or elder, past moderator, retiring moderator, general secretary, other members and guests as determined as an addition. Do you have any comments on that? Are you warm to having that in, or are you cool to having that in? I only see 2 cool cards in the whole crowd, so it's in. C, authority and responsibility. We'll go through this section by section just for clarification. You'll notice that there is an addition under denominational mission. It feels like it's in congruence with the additions made by sessional committee at the other 2, but much broader and not as detailed. So engaging national level ministry mission, encouraging local, regional, encouraging local, global. And if I'm repeating too much, do let me know. I'm just trying to respond to that sense for some people that I was rushing and it wasn't clear. So, now, microphone 4.
Moderator Bill Phipps, Alberta Northwest Conference. I wasn't sure exactly where to make this point. I was concerned with the denominational council that it needs a mission section, something like the one that was in for the regional councils. I believe we need to make a statement very, very strongly that our church exists for the sake of the health and justice of the world. And that therefore there has to be a very strong statement that the National United Church of Canada exists to help bring justice and peace and health and well-being to the whole world. We don't exist for ourselves. And I don't see that as a strong fundamental principle of our church reflected in at the national level. Okay. And I wasn't sure whether it needs another section. I think the section of denominational mission, which we're talking about right now, doesn't quite do that. It kind of is, it's not a strong, powerful statement about why we exist.
So, Bill, I'm wondering if you have, I think this would be the section to add something, because this does it in a sort of a general way from what I'm hearing. You want it more specific or stronger. Do you have a suggestion and some wording?
I don't have any specific wording because I'd really want it to be, it's a strong theological statement as well as a missional statement. And I think we want to be rooted in our history and in strong theological position that states that God loved the world so much that God gave, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it has to be a well-crafted, strong statement. We've used the word brave in our conversations a lot this week. This document needs to be much more brave and rooted in our very strong history and theology. So I think it needs to be better crafted than I can do off the top.
Okay. Microphone 3.
My suggestion in response to that is that we pick up the first bullet on page 6 of the sessional report, encouraging mission and ministry of the Regional Council, encourage and engage in, joining our collective hearts, voices, and resources, etc. That first bullet, and repeat it as the way that we do mission nationally as well.
Okay. Now, don't leave, hold that, and I want us to keep talking on this issue, not another one. So, Richard, are you responding to this? Okay. Mike 4.
This missional statement needs to be revisited at each denominational council meeting to ascertain whether or not we've kept to it, and then refocus us for the next triennium, or whatever long period between council meetings.
Okay, I hear both that need for a detailed, contextual, and timely, but I also hear Bill saying something deeper, fundamental, and rooted as well. And I'm hearing a suggestion, sorry, Mike, and I'll just say, hearing a specific suggestion from microphone 3, and now I recognize microphone 1.
Judith Evanen, Bay Quinte Conference. It might be helpful for the court to know at this point that in Bakeapple, we did pass an amended proposal that would suggest we do work on this in the next triennium.
Ah, okay, that is helpful. So could you just hold 2, please? Well, I guess not. So do we have that material? Could we actually?
It would be in the summary of Bakeapple that's gone to the, it was one of the last ones we did, so I'm guessing it's at the bottom of the page.
Okay, so.
It was Bay Quinte BQ2 was the number that it came to us as.
Could you check with the business committee, please, and they have it, okay? So Shirley is going to respond?
I have it here.
Okay.
So the Bakeapple Commission approved something that directed the 42nd General Council, direct the General Secretary to create a process for the specific purpose of developing a vision statement for the United Church of Canada and present the results to the work of the for the work of the 43rd General Council.
So that's general around vision, but hold, I'll look at microphone 2.
Russell Mitchell Walker, Saskatchewan Conference. Under denominational mission bullet 2, encouraging local and regional mission and ministry. I just want to clarify and confirm that that would include resource development and being a resource to regional councils and local congregations or communities of faith.
Okay, could you hold that, please? Because that's moving us off this precise topic, and it's important, but can we hold it? I want to get some resolution to this, because we could go with the proposal being offered through by Kathy at 3 of lifting the bullet from earlier that makes a fairly strong statement, and then recognize that we've been asked to do long-term work on vision through the Bakeapple Commission. So, microphone 5, are you speaking to this, Sue? Okay, yes. Microphone 5.
Sue Broderick, Alberta Northwest. What I heard Bill say, and I believe it should be right up with the denominational mission heading, is who we are as a denomination, not prioritizing in each triennium what mission we are going to work on, but who we are as a denomination. And I believe that's what I heard Bill asking for, that we are a denomination that is concerned of social justice, equality, our environment, and I think that's a header, and then all the other bullet points are how we will live into that. That's what I hear Bill saying.
Okay, yes. And so I'm going to keep the discussion rolling, but please make sure you take a look at page 6 of the sessional report. We had that recommendation of joining our collective hearts, voices, and resources to the witness of the gospel and vision of Jesus for a compassionate and just society, both in Canada and around the world. That may do it, it may not. Microphone 3.
Erin McIntyre Garrick, Conference of Manitoba and Northwestern Ontario. I don't have the exact wording, but I'm wondering if this would be a place where we could put in something about living with all our relations. It's not just for the two-leggeds, it's for the four-leggeds, the creepy crawly ones, the ones that fly, the ones that swim. With that, I'm wondering if that would go beyond us as a denomination and
Yep. So hold that thought. It could be we could pick up the wording that Janet offered earlier when I think we were at communities of faith or regional councils. I'm not sure which.
I think we put it in both community of faith and regional council, so it'd certainly be parallel to put it here as well.
Mike 4.
Bill Phipps again, moderator. I think what I'm hearing is a similar concern that I raised, and taking things from various places. The Bake Apple, page 6 from the sessional report, and somebody's handing me some notes as we go along. So I guess what I would suggest is that the general counsel having heard, or the executive having heard this conversation, assigns somebody or some group to craft something that has all these elements in it. I don't want to just do it sort of willy-nilly at microphones and pieces of paper, because I think it's really important as we develop new governance structures and all of that stuff, that we never lose sight of who we are as a church and why we exist, rooted in our tradition, the gospel, the biblical theology that we cherish. And I think we're perfectly capable of crafting some very strong statement that anchors us as we move into new structures. So
Bill,
that's sort of my suggestion, is that the executive take all of this conversation and ask some group to craft something that would then be approved.
I think that's very helpful, because it's clearly something many of us care deeply about, and difficult to craft it here on the spot. I'd be certainly prepared to take the conversation that's happened here along with the instruction from the Bake Apple Commission, so that and broaden the meaning of that direction to incorporate what's been talked about here and raised by Bill Phipps.
Okay. I'm looking, I see a couple of speakers at the mics, and it's going to be on this issue. Microphone 5.
Moderator Moses, Cairn High, Saskatchewan Conference. Responding to what Bill Phipps said and following up on what the General Secretary said, this issue of a mission is very, very central and fundamental to the United Church, to the Denominational Council. In the workbook, BQ2 proposed a mission statement. I forwarded to the Business Committee somewhat comprehensive response to that yes, we do need a mission statement, but it does not stand independently. It is related to a vision for the church as well as a system of values for the church. These go together, and they are actually the precursor to the other things that we do in our plan for the church. The response by the commission that looked at it is a mission would be good, but actually what we really need is a vision. It does not stand by itself. The pieces need to go together. And so my proposal is that we look that what Nora said is that it does go back to General Council, and that this be developed collectively and owned by the collective.
Okay, thank you very much. I see microphone 2.
Bill Stedman, Manitou Conference. Moderator, in light of Bill Phipps' comments, I think we also, in light of a theological statement, need to be more directive in some of the points above the theological statement line. Immediately above that, encouraging local and global partnerships. I think the wording needs to be engage in national and global partnerships, ecumenical and interfaith relationships. Because I think there's no engagement anywhere in this with respect to our partnerships, ecumenical and interfaith relationships. Okay. And then the idea of encouraging the local would be under the bullet point above, encouraging local and regional mission and ministry, partnerships, ecumenical and interfaith relationships. So we encourage the local and regional to do all of this, but we engage in, as a denomination, national and global partnerships, ecumenical and interfaith relationships. That's the mandate of a committee I once chaired. So I think it's important to make sure we're engaging, not just encouraging.
But we haven't decided on the other yet. Okay, Bill, hold that, because I want to just be clear. What we've heard in a good, strong discussion is that we are feeling the need to articulate more centrally and strongly our commitment to mission. It is implied in what is there. It needs to be stronger. And the suggestion has been that we give instruction through the Bake Apple and through this conversation to the General Counsel, moving into the Executive and through the General Secretary, that such a statement be made and it will be part of the document. That's my reading of this, and I want to, is that?
I don't think it'll be part of this document because it might come back next time.
Okay, it may come back this time, but are you warm to that? Or are you cool to that? That we would do that work? Okay, it looks like we're warm. One moment, please. I'm going to add one further stipulation that's mine, saying it's being referred, but that it may not be in this document, but we are committed to make sure that what the principles that will come, because it may not come to the next General Council, are operative. Is that just fuzzy? Seems like me at a mic trying to add unhelpful info. I think, okay, I'll let it stand. Jim, did you have a comment? No?
I have a point of clarification over here.
Okay, mic one.
Thank you, moderator. Ruth Denton, the Manitoba and Northwestern Ontario Conference. In the Bake Apple Commission, what it was actually stated that we had was not a theological statement, but a vision statement. And I just wanted to make that clarification for everyone here in the court.
Okay, it's a vision statement, which would be simultaneously our mission statement as well. No. Okay, I'm getting a little lost.
So what I was hearing, and I'm not sure whether it needs to be captured in the wording of this or not, but clearly from the discussion in this court, there's a wish for something broader than what was approved in Bake Apple. And I'm certainly prepared, based on the comments here, to incorporate a broader mandate in developing something that would return to the next General Council. If people want to see something named in here that reflects that, that's fine, and they could offer wording to the business table. Otherwise, I'm prepared to simply understand that as the mandate based on the intensity of the discussion here.
Okay, could you go back to where you were, please? No, back to where you were. We had a proposal that came through microphone 3 that we would just take what we had in a previous statement, the joining our collective hearts and voices. It signals some of what Bill was pointing to. Clearly, we know we need to do more work. Are we warm to having that first reference point under denominational mission of joining our collective hearts and have that in? You're warm to that. Good. It gives a little more oomph. And now we are also saying we will do the ongoing work as well. Thank you. And then I want to go back to Bill before I recognize the other mics, because he was saying I wanted to flip, unless who has it? Mike, that's the procedural mic. Is yours a procedural question?
I think it's procedural.
Yes, okay.
So, moderator, it would help me, and I don't know that we have this answer yet, but to think for a moment what remits would look like coming out of this. Because if remits were, in a broad sense, does the church support a 3-court system? Does the church support a change in funding from missional to assessment at the denominational level? Those very broad strokes. Then these conversations, this is a rich, important conversation, but all of this can go back to be worked finely for the next General Council, and we can let go of some of our intensity here. But if we're sending out this full document to the church as a remit, then we've got to try and do this. And I don't think we can, because I don't think the church can cope with it. So my experience of the executive and our general secretary is these conversations will be heard and they will be taken out to various groups and committees to come back with a rich document. And so I just ask that.
I think that's helpful. And just to say, yes, some of the decisions being made will require remits. And typically with remits, we focus in on the particular part that needs to be decided by the church as a whole, and then there'll be a study document, of course, that accompanies that. So it's more likely to be parts of what you're doing that actually are the level of change that require a remit, and those would be accompanied by a study document.
So thank you very much for that reminder. I'm just going back here. You see in yellow, we had a suggestion that we take out the word encourage and put in engage in national and global partnerships and ecumenical. I'm going to ask, are you warm to that word shift from encourage to engage? Yes. Okay, so that goes in. And the other, did that change it? Encourage local and regional mission ministry partnerships, ecumenical and interfaith. Just broadening that. Are you warm to that addition as well? Or cool, I'm sorry, warm or cool. It's a simultaneous. Thank you. That's good. So that's where we're at. And now I'm not sure, I guess microphone 3.
Thank you, moderator. Stephen McDonald, Hamilton Conference. I would suggest a change in wording, like put encouraging back, but then add another bullet saying engage in international level ministry and mission in cooperation with our global partners, such as the United Church of Christ in the United States.
I'm going to rule that we have already dealt with that.
Okay.
By saying engage in national and global partnerships, and what I'm worried about is it's, yes, you could be right, but it's close to wordsmithing.
Okay.
Are you agreed with that?
More or less, yeah.
More or less. Thank you for the more rather than the less. I appreciate that. Number 4.
Thank you, Moderator. Hewitt Holmes, Manitoba, Northwestern Ontario. Just a point of clarification, sir. And I know others may disagree. There is a marked difference between a vision statement and a mission statement. It was the vision of Jesus to offer life to humanity. It was his mission of providing healing and hope to others that accomplished this vision. Let's not mix them up, please.
Okay.
Bake Apple is asking for the big picture, and some of us are asking for the small picture, which is how we get through it, which is our missional way of doing stuff. It is the big picture that Bake Apple asked for. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Microphone 5.
Maxine Reed, Bay of Quinte Conference. If I may offer some wisdom from the secular world, the vision statement is the statement of the organization. It is almost in cement. It rarely changes. Below the vision, we would create our mission goals, whatever they may be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll give that as advice to the ongoing work to do that. And my apologies for having created some confusion around the two words. They're clear, but not always clear. Now, I'm going to go back to microphone 2 because I put Russell to the side and because we were dealing with another one. So Russell, I'm going to reinsert you and give you a priority, and I appreciate your patience.
No problem. Thank you, Moderator. Russell Mitchell Walker, Saskatchewan Conference. So I just have a question. I think it's clarification. There may be some wording adding, but the engaging national level ministry and mission, I want to make sure that that includes resource development and being a resource to regional councils and communities of faith.
So help me with suggested wording.
So maybe we just say including resource development and being a resource to regional councils and communities of faith. Other bullet, the one above, engaging national level ministry and mission, including resource development and being a resource to regional councils and communities of faith.
Friends, are you warm or cool to that? Warm or cool? Please, more participation. It basically warm to that. Okay, in it goes. Thank you, Russell. Now, I've lost track. Help here, I think. Okay, you were there. Now, you stepped aside graciously for Russell. Thank you. Mike 2.
Sean Hancock, Maritime Conference. When you came to address us at Maritime Conference, you spoke to us about boxes, about how we live inside boxes and we like to place things inside boxes. I'm hearing us trying to place the Spirit inside a box. I am mindful of the fact that we have 20 articles of faith. I am mindful of the fact that we have a new creed. I am mindful of the fact that we have a song of faith and that we meet every triennium to chase the Spirit and see where she may be calling us to next. We do not need to box in and nail down the Holy Spirit. We need to trust that God will guide us.
Thank you very much. Nice to know that the Boxes poem sort of hung around. Thank you. Microphone 3.
Bill Phipps, Alberta Northwest Conference moderator. I want to thank the court for this conversation because I think it's fundamental. And I want to say something about vision, mission, and what I was talking about. I'm talking about a theological grounding of who we are and why we are as a church that then leads to our vision, and from that comes the various mission activities we engage in. But it's our theological grounding and historical grounding that I think is what I was trying to get at. Thank you.
Bill, I can hear you talking yourself into being a participant of whatever little commission or group gets developed. I appreciate your wisdom. Microphone 5.
Mint Marcellus, Bay of Quinte Conference. Moderator, I'm worried that we have engaged in that unfortunate sin of wordsmithing here. We have two, as far as I see it, two large conversations that we still have to have. And around my table and around the tables around my table, I've seen a lot of dozing off, and when you hear the warm or cold, raising the warm, waiting to get to the next conversation. The other two remaining are what mechanism will decide regional councils and what assessments will look like.
Yeah. I hear you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to use that and say, unless you have something crucial, I'd rather test the will of the court at this point. Microphones 2, 3, and 4. Do you need to speak, or do you think we are ready to go on this? You're not moving. Okay. Microphone 2.
Dave Jagger from Hamilton Conference. Moderator, I come to speak to express some frustration and some concern as I look at the whole bunch of yellow up there. I understood that the comprehensive review program and task group was put in place to make us nimbler, to make us smaller, and to make us more responsive. We are recreating the general counsel we currently have, and that is not what this is about.
Okay, thank you. Microphone 3.
My comment, Carrie Copeman-Haynes from BC Conference, just takes us to that high level where it's clearly noted by all the proposals that came in that the church wants us to see communities of faith as the heart of our church. And so I would propose that we just think in our heads about communities of faith as the heart, and the second level being a support to that. I would propose that this level of our governance actually be around identity. And so that takes into account all the vision, all the mission, the theological pieces that Bill has been raising. If we think about the function of this level of the church as primarily identity and relationship.
Okay.
That's what I would like to offer.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Paul Browning, London Conference. Because I believe the United Church at the national level has a special responsibility for identity, I'm proposing that we add another bullet to our mission. And this balances a very important and good move that we're making to have many streams of coming into ministry and training for lay and clergy, and being able to utilize resources from many different places. So to balance that, I'm suggesting that, do we have it up there?
Put it up there, please.
Partnering with educational centers and theological colleges to provide educational and leadership development opportunities that are rooted in the values, mission, ethos, and theology of the United Church of Canada. We're a very...
Okay, I'm going to stop and say, Court, are you warm to having that in, or are you cool? You're cool to that. Thank you, Paul. I am now going to ask, take a look at what's up there in a lot of yellow, but some white. And are you warm to having this included, or are you cool? I'm seeing almost all warm. I'm counting about 5 cool cards. It's in. Okay. Policy. Take a look. That's exactly what was in the CRTG. It seems to me have just been lifted. I recognize microphone 3.
Michael Koyman, Toronto Conference.
I just want to put a line through worship because the third leg of the Reformation stool is that worship, freedom to determine worship policy belongs with the congregations, communities of faith, we now call them.
I'm looking for some help here. I think the limitations would address that, Michael. It says under freedom of worship, just on the flip side page. Would that be acceptable?
I simply suggest we take it out to reinforce the line that freedom of worship for communities of faith is essential.
Okay.
And the service that we construct at Central in Weston would be unappealing to lots of people if we tried to push to have it set as a national standard. That would violate the principle that we all live under and enjoy.
Okay, I'm going to test the...
And John Young is nodding, so I have to be right.
Okay. I'm going to hear one more on microphone 2, and then I'm going to test the will of the court on whether we eliminate the word worship from this section.
Moderator, Ross Bartlett Maritime, the intention of the Sessional Committee was not to override the historic limitations, but to acknowledge the fact that from time to time, the General Council does set policies around worship. For example, we are members of Plura, Presbyterians United, Lutheran, Romans, and Anglicans, where we have certain commitments around, for example, the formula in baptism. Those are not seen as being a violation of the freedom of local congregations, but they are, in fact, denominational policies. It was those sorts of things. The approval, for example, of a hymn book, Voices United, or of a worship resource book, as we did in the General Council a number of years ago with Celebrate God's Presence. Those are policies which do not violate the local freedoms, but they are certainly within the purview of this court and its executive.
Okay, thank you very much. No, we have one speaker. You got one shot at it. You had it. That's good, and you spoke well. I'm going to ask, do you wish to, are you warm to keeping the word worship in here at this point, or are you cool? You want to keep it in, so the word worship stays there, recognizing that when we hit limitations, there's a strong statement about freedom of worship. We're looking at policy. Are there any other comments on other factors of that? Then, seeing nobody there, are you warm to this or cool? Almost universally warm, unless I've missed something. Governance. And again, it looks like this is primarily being lifted from CRTG. Take a look at that. The only thing was change of option of participating, and what they've done is full participation, which is just, I think, a clarification because we don't know the implications and possibilities of the technology, but it needs to be full, whatever it is. Are there any comments at the mics? Seeing nobody, are you warm then to having this in, or are you cool? Okay, there she goes. As it's in, yes. Sorry, were you, oh, you had a question. Go for it. I love questions.
Sorry, Gary. Carrie Copeman-Haynes again. The question is that currently it would be regions who elect the executive of the denominational council. So this actually is a pretty substantial change, that something that we would do at the denominational level would be elect our executive every 3 years. So I just wanted to, that's how I understand that.
I think we're about to do it later this morning. So the regions do put forward the names, and but I think we do a formal thing of electing them here. And because not everybody on the executive, as it currently is, we may have a different format, is coming out of a regional council, we typically approve the whole thing here.
That's why it was a question.
Okay, question. Microphone 4.
Yes, Michael Koyman, Toronto Conference. I would like to add to the last bullet point, so it would read, approving the number and boundaries of regional councils, comma, supporting them, and then I guess the semicolon, and promoting parity in service across regions.
Okay. Would you want to comment on that?
Of service.
Okay. So that's parity, not parity.
The parity.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, and one
parity of
one
service.
one of the principles, or one of the things that we said yes to half an hour ago, was that regional councils would have the freedom to hire more staff if they had more resources, and I'm deeply grieved that we. I'm not grieved that we can do that, but just that inequality will exist.
Yes.
And I think that a denominational council should do more than encourage sharing, but should shepherd these regional councils into trying to be equal. It's not fair that in Toronto Conference we have a Cadillac service.
I hear you. I hear
and
you.
there's
You hit
Pinto
your
in other
time.
places.
That's what I'm saying. So what we have is a suggestion of adding promoting parity of service across region. That's stronger than encouraging. It may have legal limitations, but it is a promotion of the parity. So it's the concept. Are you in favor of including that, or are you cool to that? I see about 3 or 4 cool and the rest warm. Okay, that one's in. Finance and administration. Okay. This is a little tricky because at one level we have already dealt with this, or we tried to deal with it. And so I'm going to have to ask us to work on it again. Where my memory is, and I will stand to be corrected because we had a late night discussion, is I think we said there will be one assessment of the communities of faith. What we didn't decide is whether it would be located in the region or in the national, and whether the national would assess and then fund the regions, or whether the regions would assess and then fund the national. This suggests, well, this raises that question for you. And so I want you to take a look at this, and we will not at this point determine the how, or whether it will be, are we going to do the M&S here? Split between M&S and governance? Okay, we're not going to we're going to just say, we're looking at 3-year budget framework and determining the assessment of communities of faith for the 3-year period. And then we'd cut out the next thing because we're not sending reps, and maintaining the denominational archives, a blessing. So what we would be looking at is that first line, and whether we should put back what was crossed out, because we don't know where the location of the assessment will be. I'm going to ask you to have 2 or 3 minutes of table time on this so that we can be clear, and determining the assessment formula.
No, I don't do answers to questions. Pardon?
Yeah, I know I do. I tried to buy more blouses recently.
Sure.
Hello. And I won't wear my hat this time. Oh, okay. I don't want to be disrespectful. That's the question I think that we're asked to look at. We don't. I think we just need to go implementation. I don't think it matters on communities of faith that we get rid of the conference right now. It doesn't matter.
So friends, I'm going to ask you in the next 30 seconds to draw your attention, your conversation to a close. Bring energy back to the full circle. So we are now looking at finance and administration and the first two lines. Setting the 3-year budget framework, determining the assessment of communities of faith, determining the assessment formula for communities of faith, and assessing them to meet the requirements of the budget. I recognize microphone 3.
Bev Kostychuk, Saskatchewan Conference. I think the important thing is that we've agreed to one assessment. And so to me, it's an implementation question, whether it would be more reasonable it be at one court or the other, or one at the denominational level or the regional level. I don't think at this point it matters to congregations whether they get the letter about their assessment from the presbytery or the conference. So I would think maybe we should just leave which one of the courts should do it. It needs to be in there for sure. But in implementation, decide what is the most, the easiest place for that to be done.
Okay. Thank you very much. You have a comment?
Well,
Comment.
just that currently the denomination doesn't have the power to assess. So if we want it to, that would need to be in and go to remit, I think.
Just as a reminder, remember that we fund our denominational governance as well as our mission from voluntary contributions from the M&S. And the practical governance assessment is just done at presbytery and at conference level. This is to shift to say our governance at the national will also come from an assessment if we go and approve funding formula 6. Now, microphone 4.
Jan Stevenson, Alberta and Northwest. Thinking in practical terms, what is most effective and efficient when it comes to assessment? To have it done nationally through one office or regionally through a whole bunch of offices? Which one works best and is least cumbersome and bureaucratic?
Okay. Thank you. Microphone 5, please.
Sue Broderick, Alberta and Northwest. Because we just all felt warm about the governance and allowing the governance of approving the number and boundaries of regional councils, we really need to then put back in determining the assessment of communities, because the regional councils At this point, we don't know how many. So we need the assessment to happen at the denominational.
Thank you very much. Microphone 2, please.
Kate Crawford from London Conference. There are two factors, I think, that need to be taken into consideration when we talk about taxation, which is what an assessment is. One is efficiency, and I hear that being spoken to. The other is tax fairness. There are established principles of tax fairness which say that the person receiving the tax or making the tax needs to be as close as possible to the person paying the tax. The person paying the tax is the one who is going to be putting their hand in the pocket and handing the money out. If the person who's paying the tax does not have a direct communication with the person taking the tax, they are disenfranchised. Right now, the only body that the communities of faith, those who have their hands in the pocket ready to hand out the money, have a relationship with is the regional council. So I would strongly speak against the denominational council having the ability to assess. They would have the ability to bill. They could bill each regional council for the amount they need to run. But we, who the communities of faith are going to pay the bill, need to have representation on the body taking the money.
Thank you. Microphone 3.
Maggie Rogers, BC Conference. I am in sympathy with what the previous speaker just said, but I'm also keeping in mind the concept that here we're looking at broad picture and looking at figuring out the implementation details later. So what I would suggest we do here is simply say that the denomination level will determine an assessment formula and leave the details of where and how that gets assessed for implementation. So basically cross everything out after assessment formula.
Okay, the only difference, if you do that, what you've said, though, is that the national community does not have the power to assess.
No, I'm saying the national does have the power to assess, but we're not saying where they are assessing. I personally feel they should be assessing the regional councils, but I'm suggesting that that actually is an implementation detail to be worked out later.
Okay. So would you go with this wording, or would you make a change to the wording that's up there?
I'm really uncomfortable with it saying that they're assessing the communities of faith. If we're going to specify where they're assessing, then I would go with what the previous speaker said. They are going to be assessing the regional councils.
So you would cut it at the word formula, determining the assessment formula.
And okay, you could include to meet the requirements of the budget.
To meet the requirements of the budget.
So crossing out from communities of faith and assessing them.
As I hear that, it still wouldn't give a power to assess, though. So I hear your point that you're saying...
Yes to assessment, but leaving out the details of how that assessment goes to basically to you to figure out with implementation. I personally think it should be for the regional councils, but I'm letting that go. Yeah. I'm trusting that you can figure out what works best.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'll hear from microphone 4 rather than test something. I'll hear the wisdom of that, and we'll hold it at the moment because it's confusing still for me. 4.
Sarah Leffler, Hamilton Conference. I think that assessing at the national level is helpful in many ways because they're the one that has the information from ADP, the comprehensive salaries, and from our review of assets. But also it would help promote parity because we are all looking at our own little piece, but they can have that broader look. And I think that when it comes to the regional and the local space, we can still show grace to one another. If you see someone struggling, we can offer to help, but the assessment overall would have a broader view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Microphone.
One has been here
long. I'm sorry, thank you. Oh, one. Matthew?
Matthew from London Conference. Just a question for clarity. Under this new system, would the educational centers and training centers, would they fall under what is the new mission and service sort of thing? or do they fall under the finance and administration?
So that's part of the detail not worked out, but in my sense, things like that that are part of missional work may well be funded through mission and service. There might be elements of what supports them that is funded through the assessments.
Okay, supplementary to your response then, I would suggest that we put in a bottom bullet that says, similar to the one above it, maintenance of the educational and training centers.
Matthew, I'm going to put that out of order at the moment. I think it doesn't fit our general high-level principle. It commits the national to funding educational centers, which may or may not be the way, and we don't do it now. And it may not be clear that we do it in the future. So I want to figure out how we're doing the assessment first before we figure out where that money's going. So I'll take microphone 2 procedurally.
I could just name a principle that might help Matthew. I mean, typically when budgets come up, they're competing interests, educational centers, global grants, grants for mission in Canada, all those things. And so typically that's left, all those things are on the table and without a predetermination of how it would just be distributed.
I take well your comment. My concern only is that we've given an awful lot of work to educational centers to complete and no assurance they're going to be there to do it. So I was hoping to have some place where we could say we're sure there's going to be some kind of an educational component built in.
Thank you. Microphone 1, is it a procedural question?
Perhaps point of privilege. Jane Johnson, Maritime Conference. Out of respect for Bermuda, can we be consistent in saying denominational and not national?
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I'm seeing another Bermudian saying Yahoo. Okay, my fault. Thank you for the correction. Microphone 2.
Greg Smith Young, Hamilton Conference. I would favor wording determining the assessment formula for regional councils and assessing them to meet the requirements of the budget. And then the regional councils would assess communities of faith. This comes out of an experience I had. I was pastoral charge supervisor for a congregation that was doing very well, thriving, and then went through a crisis, and 2/3 of their people left. In our conference, we assess based on supporting households and worship attendance, and because of the lag of getting the statistics, we were still using those numbers from when they were doing great. They approached the presbytery and said, we would like to have our assessment lowered. Presbytery, being close to the congregation, as a regional would be, knew the situation and was able to be very responsive to their context. I fear that a denominational assessment body would not be able to be as responsive.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Microphone 3.
Tom Smart, Bay of Quinte Conference. I speak in favor of the assessment being done at the national level, and also the reality is the funds come from our local communities of faith. So for the sake of clarity and straightforwardness, I suggest we undelete the words in yellow and restore the wording for communities of faith and assessing them. I believe that is the reality of what would happen, and we should be straightforward in stating that.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to take a risk because maybe I'm going to be too heavy-handed, but I just want to draw clarity to the court's attention. When we get to CRTG 6, which Sessional Committee is recommending, that means recommending that M&S go completely for mission and that governance be done by assessment. If we do not have national assessment, then all the work of governance at the national level will be completely dependent on the regions deciding how much money to give, if that's where this assessment is. So regions assess, and they are closer, and it is taxation with representation. But if you go with the division, then national will have no source of income other than being dependent on the generosity and the discretion of the regions. Now, maybe I'm overstating. Microphone 4.
Jean McDonald, BC Conference. Gary, thank you for saying what I think I was going to say with a lot more detail. What I wanted to point out is that when we get into this wordsmithing, often I think it's because we are not clear about what the underlying principles are that are being debated. This is about power, folks. The guys that assess make the decisions about the money and where it's coming from and where it goes are the ones that have the power. So where we put that assessment makes a big difference in the power structure of the church.
Yes. Thank you. Microphone 5.
Thank you for getting back to me. Bill McCausland, Bay of Quinte Conference. Just a couple of things. One, we need to be aware that the 3-year budget is not necessarily something set in stone, so we need to have that language worked on a little bit. The second thing, as a former presbytery treasurer, I would love to be able to be in a position where I could say, well, National was the one who set it, so that they're the ones who have to take care of it. On the other hand, I've been in the position of getting those calls where it said, we can't make our assessment for this quarter, can you give us a little leeway? And those kinds of things. And I think that there needs to be the possibility for National maybe assessing the regional areas so that then we can go and that the regional areas do the assessment for the whole thing, because every region is going to be different, as every conference and every presbytery is different now. And they all have different ministries and missions they are responsible for and to.
Okay, thank you. Just to let you know, the word is framework under the budget, so that gives that flexibility. Okay, microphone 2.
Catherine Stewart Savage, Hamilton Conference. I think that if we remove the assessment from the denominational level, we also have to remove the request for parity, because they cannot provide parity if they're not doing the assessments.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to draw your attention that at 11:30, we're shifting to new business. I would like us to be able to test the will of the court on this issue. So let's look at our comments carefully. Microphone 3.
Mervyn Gallant, Alberta Northwest Conference. I'm willing to trust either denomination or regional to make the ultimate decisions. What I'm wondering about are those particular ministries within the region, how they would then be funded if the national were doing it, or vice versa. I'm just not sure.
I would suggest that that's probably a detail of implementation. It might be very similar to how things get funded through our present M&S giving and regional assessment. But
so it's assuming they would be M&S, not...
Well, not necessarily.
But if we're talking about community ministries or camps or something, then they're likely to be supported through the M&S.
Okay, microphone 4.
Moderator, I'm not so sure if my comments are helpful, but I speak from the lens of coming from another denomination. And in the Methodist structure, the top body, aka the national, the denominational body, assesses the court below, not depending on the court below to give what they feel like, but it's an assessment on the district. The districts then in turn look on what they have to give to the denomination and determine what they need to do along with that, and then assess the congregations. So I've seen the process work where the denomination level assesses the court below, and that court then determines its needs and assesses the congregation. In that regard, therefore, the congregations are part and parcel of determining the budget of the region, and therefore will have an idea of how much we will have to give. And the region, therefore, has a part and parcel to play in the denomination to say, hey, this is what your budget will look like. And so each level, there's dialogue, I would argue, between each level to come upon what, in fact, will be paid. So I give that lens that I've seen how that works.
Thank you. Could you comment on that? Or is there... that strikes me as having wisdom.
What I'm hearing is, just from the room, an interest in the denomination having the power to assess, but two different views. One, that they should have the power to assess the congregation, and one that it should be the region. I hear that being lifted up in different ways. We've just heard an example of another church that where the denomination is able to assess the region. So I don't have anything to add to that, moderator, except that I think both of those are possibilities, but that under what's being proposed, the denomination would need to have the power to assess somebody.
Okay. I'm going to hear from a couple more mics. All of you standing there, hopefully we'll have time. You may not, because I'm going to ask for some kind of reading before the 11:30 shift to new kinds of business. So I'm at microphone 5.
Mint Marcellus Bay of Quinte Conference. Let's be clear about what the national assessment is if we're talking about assessing congregations or communities of faith. Sorry. It is like our federal transfer between provinces. It is allowing for parity and helping those who are in need within our church. And I am very worried that if we do not assess at the national level, that we are going to have the same problem of struggling regions that we do already. Therefore, I am strongly, strongly urging this body to support a national or denominational, assessment rather than a more step-by-step process.
Thank you very much. Microphone 2, please.
Steve Hershey, BC Conference. Moderator, may I offer a suggested wording of another principle? That there shall be one assessment, and the administration of that assessment shall rest with the regional council. I would like to leave it as vague and as broad as that in order that the implementation can work with the ethos of our church, with the tradition of our church, to allow for the dialogue to go back and forth as to how it would happen. It would not...
No, I'm going to say I'm not going to test that because it is in fact deciding that it will go regionally and then we work out implementation. So that's jumping to a decision before we're there. Thank you very much. Microphone 4. Okay. Procedural mic number 1.
Point of clarification. Blair Patterson, Montreal, Ottawa Conference Moderator. Point of clarification. I think it's important that we note we made a decision about one assessment.
Yes.
And so that so when we discuss about where that assessment goes, that we are clear that it's one assessment to the communities of faith. That's the one we're talking about. We're not talking about assessments maybe to the regional council. Is that clear? Is that correct? Like when we talk about only one assessment, we are talking only one assessment to the funding body, which is so where that assessment comes from, it really doesn't matter. Am I clear in that?
Yes and no. What I'm hearing is that there would be one assessment to the communities of faith. That's right. If it's the regional body, then they have the money, and we need to say, does the national have the right to assess the regions? Or we say the national will have the right to assess and then make the parity in the distribution. But
So what we're actually doing is we're discussing the implementation part of it right now because we have agreed that only the community of faith get assessed once. How it's collected is a very different thing.
What I'm hearing is that it's more than implementation. It is suggesting where money goes, there goes the power. So whether it would go to the national and then be distributed, or whether it would go to the regional and be distributed. So it's one assessment, but there's a little bit more than implementation, is my reading.
But when we talk about assessment to the regions, it's not the same assessment as we are talking about the assessment to the communities of faith. It's
right.
not the same order.
That's right.
Okay, I think that's an important thing for the court to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you. Microphone 4, and I'm going to say the person behind a microphone 4, it's cut off, and I'm going to hear from microphone 5 because we have 3 minutes before we move to new business.
Ed Bardock,
different business.
Ed Bardock, Alberta Northwest Conference. I think over the last 2 days we've debated this and agreed one assessment. What bothers me right now is because we've said that it might be more efficient and effective to go to the national, we're forgetting those 7 points we have sung to every morning in 3 languages, the element of trust. And I wish we would get back to trusting people to do the right thing.
Thank you. And a final comment from microphone 5. Well, I don't know where you were, 2. You were there too. So I'll do 5 and 2, and that's it.
Vic Weeb, Saskatchewan Conference. I think the only way to have equity is to do it at the national level, because how else do you redistribute money from wealthy areas to poorer areas or less wealthy areas if you don't have a national assessment that can then equalize things? Otherwise, we will continue the current inequalities.
Thank you. Microphone 2, and this is our last comment.
Thank you, moderator. Matthew Fillier, Maritime Conference. I have full confidence that we're going to arrive at an assessment formula, and our staff are wonderful folks and will figure that out. My piece is the last few words of this line, the requirements of the budget. It's $11 million. And as I'm here as a commissioner and I'm trying to consider what this overall proposal is going to do and how we're going to get there, I haven't heard any broad stroke. I know we can't do specifics, but maybe when we come back, can we have some broad stroke direction about where those cuts are going to come from and they need and have to happen? And I'm just thinking of our communities of faith, and as we consider this as a commissioner, I need to have some sense of that what we're doing, we can get there, and what's the broad stroke plan of how we are going to do that? Because that will affect how we assess who. I really need to know that. Thank you.
So if I can just comment, huge topic, and I'm so glad you raised it. Of course, the budget decisions that need to be made fairly soon are going to be done before any of this sort of thing would be approved by a remit. So I think what you're looking at is a process for the future, the principle of whether governance and administration kinds of costs would be funded through assessment and mission and service, primarily for mission and service type of work. We don't have the budget decisions yet, but basically they're gonna cut all over because we need to make significant changes. But we'll get some guidance from the discussion at this meeting and the priorities that get set by the executive, and we'll do our best.
Okay. I'm going to ask you now to have 2 or 3 minutes in your table group to talk about the wisdom of what you've heard, and then I'm going to test the will of the court. I'm going to bring you back in a moment, about a minute, to wrap up your conversations, and then we will focus our attention and I'll help clarify the question, I hope. So if I could draw your attention back to the center circle, and if I could have the slide that we've been working on up there, please. It seems to me that the central concept that I want to test is whether we think it's a good idea, whether we're warm to having the national body, National Council, Denominational Council, General Council, determine whether they can assess communities of faith. So what I'm going to look at is the yellow line. That would be the national denominational body determining the assessment formula for communities of faith and assessing them to meet the requirements of the budget. So the principle is national will have that power to assess. All feeling warm or cool? Let me see where we're at. I would say that we are very much in a majority of warm to that with some cool. So I'm going to say that's where we're at. And then we can work out details of implementation and how that then funds regional council and the mission in the local, etc. Thank you. Now, I've just been told by the business committee that I have permission to shorten your lunch break. I'm hoping you can nod because there are no other meetings, no learning opportunities. So I'm going to suggest that we keep working on CRTG till noon. And at noon, we're going to have the wonderful celebration of our partnership. I keep wanting to call it a marriage but a partnership with our cousins, the United Church of Christ. And that might be a great way to move us into our mealtime. It will be a celebratory feast at that moment. And that means I'm trusting that the kitchen will have, well, something celebratory. Who knows? Okay, folks. You're turning over the page now. I'm going to say, I guess I better do, are we in favor of having maintaining denominational archives at the national level? Please just show yes or cool, yes, cool. That's an easy one. Okay, it's in there. Now, we're on page 10, and we're on delimitations. And that just seems to me just no addition. It's what comes from the CRTG. And microphone 5, please.
Moderator Bill Thomas, Hamilton Conference. Can we go back up just for a second? Where? Well, I don't have a problem with the archives one, but we are still going to be having denominational council meetings. And even though we are not sending representatives from every community of faith, do we not have to talk about, and maybe we don't, but are individuals or the regions are going to be responsible for all of the cost of sending representatives?
Yes, we've already passed that, saying that the part of the regional council responsibility is electing members by a formula that is yet to be determined to get them to the denominational council.
Okay.
That was previous business. Because if they're not coming from the communities, they've got to come from the region, but we don't know how yet. That's implementation. Thanks for clarifying. So we're at limitations. I'm looking if there's anybody at the mic that feels they need to comment. Otherwise, I'm going to say it's fairly straightforward. It's pretty standard. Are you in warm or cool to this, please, folks? Okay, we're warm. And then just to note, that does lift up the concern Michael Kuhlman had raised of freedom of worship. So that's balanced by denominational policies, but it's there. Now we come to the executive of the denominational council. And this is one where I want you to pay some attention, because it is a shift from what the CRTG recommended, which was a small executive, if you'll notice, between 12 and 18. And at the moment, and then what's suggested is simply no decision about that. And then when you had all the cross out, it was the people that would be there, and that was a strategy for trying to achieve a smaller executive. And the principle behind that was that we would have an executive which would be small, that would consult largely, but we do not have the principle that at an executive level, every voice needs to be at the table to ensure that it is heard. At the present moment, we have reps from every regional council. We have representatives from about 6 or 7 different constituencies in the church saying every voice needs to be there. The notion or the concept of the smaller executive is that you don't have every voice, but those at the table have to be sure they're in consultation and listening to and in direct communication with every voice. So I think, are there comments? And I'll look at number 2. Please, Mike 2.
Moderator Ross Bartlett, Maritime Conference, the thinking of the Sessional Committee, and if you go further ahead in your documentation, you will see that there is a Sessional Committee proposal, is that there needs to be consistency in who is on the executives, both at the regional and the denominational council. From the proposals, from the conferences, we had a variety of very strong input. We had a particularly strong input around the presence of the UCW. We felt that the whole matter of who belongs where is the subject of a wider discussion than we could have here. We realized that who is part of executives has a financial bearing, but if we keep adding people as per the requests of the conference proposals, it just continues to grow. So we are suggesting in a subsequent proposal that the whole matter of who needs to be part of executives, who entirely needs to be part of executives, needs to be dealt with in a comprehensive fashion rather than piecemeal section by section.
Could you answer that, please?
And I'm just going to note that from the Sessional Committee, when we look at that material on page 14, they have a whole separate proposal. That's why they pulled things out and they've put it over to be decided later. And as I understand it, they're also directing that the remits would not be issued until some of those things had been decided. So just so that people are having in mind, that's why they've been moved one place, that's where they're in the other. It's a little bit slower process that we're talking about. Might or might not be concluded for the next General Council.
Okay. Microphone 5, please.
Darla Sloan, Synode Montréal et Ottawa. I'm reminded as we're talking about who needs to be at the table, that wonderful play we saw, and as a woman listening to that little section about how the men were speaking for the women and I don't need to go into all the details. I think you all got the gist of that snippet. We talked about technology. So while I don't want to increase cost, I also want us to avoid that repeating that scene in our courts and having other people try to say, we can speak for you. I don't want people to speak for me and tell me what I need as a woman, as a person with a disability, ou comme francophone. Je veux que mes multiples voix soient représentées par les gens à la et je pense qu'il y a des moyens qu'on a technologiques qui ne coûtent pas trop cher, mais qui nous aidera à éviter que l'histoire se répète et que les gens parlent pour d'autres.
Okay. Microphone 6, please.
Je veux que mes multiples voix soient représentées par les gens à la et je pense qu'il y a des moyens qu'on a technologiques qui ne coûtent pas trop cher, mais qui nous aidera à éviter que l'histoire se répète et que les gens parlent pour d'autres.
Thank you very much. I would look to microphone 2, and then I'll go 3, and then 5.
Crystal Sharametta, Saskatchewan. I'm not speaking much about the number of what the executive should be, as more to a general principle. There's been a lot of discussion about trust and how we need to trust one another, but the reality is at the moment we don't. And I feel the best way to ensure that that might happen is to build it in with a principle. And so I would offer this as a suggestion to show our trust of the lower courts below the General Council. That we would say after denominational council, living into covenantal relationship with and mutual accountability to the General Council, regional councils, and communities of faith.
Okay, where does that go? Where would that go, please?
I'm looking right at after the executive of denominational council, right before the strikeouts begin. Between meetings of the denominational council, right there.
And if you could just repeat it, it would be helpful to our people trying to type it up there. Thank you.
Living into covenantal relationship with and mutually accountability with the General Council, regional councils, and communities of faith.
Okay. I'm not sure, can we get some version of that up there? What you're hearing is that the executive would conversation, covenant relationship, mutual accountability with the, what we call, quote, the lower courts, not necessarily lower, but that would be with the regional councils and communities of faith. Okay, we'll place that and we will come back to that, and I will test the will of the court on whether to include that. Hold that and stay near the mic if you need to. Microphone 3.
Thank you, Moderator. Hugh Johnson, Alberta Northwest. I speak in suggesting that we should not strike out the bullet under size. I think if we're going to be a nimble and practical and action-based organization, we have to have a small executive, whether it's 12, 18, anything more than 20, it's not effective and expedient. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that, particularly, well, no, sealed my mouth. Number, I said 5, and then we'll go back to 2 and 4, or 3. 5?
Brian Cornelius, MNO Conference, and also chair of the Permanent Committee on Finance. We need to recognize that with what we have done, we have placed back into the budget all of the costs for the denominational council meeting and the ongoing costs for the executive. We had the plan of the CRTG was to take those costs and they'd no longer be in the budget, that they'd be funded another way. I would be arguing for a smaller executive, and I would also be arguing that we need to recognize that we probably need to have a smaller general counsel. And we haven't necessarily specified that or had that conversation. I would be arguing that for cost reasons, and also as one of our behavior changes in how much we're using fossil fuels and so forth for the way in which we operate as a church and a court, our actual behaviors. So I just lift that up as principles that we need to do things smaller and not use such costly means to do it.
Thank you very much. Microphone 2, please.
Paul Stott, Toronto Conference. I would also speak in favor of a smaller executive. And I would share that in Toronto Conference, it's been the practice before every executive meeting to gather the commissioners to the previous General Council and talk about the issues coming to that executive meeting with our 2 representatives so that there's a much wider sharing of opinion going into that meeting. And I would suggest that that could happen even on a wider basis, mediated by technology before every executive meeting, so that voices could come to the table, but not necessarily be at the table.
Thank you very much. Microphone 4, please.
Hi, Eden Middleton, Alberta Northwest Conference. I would love to reiterate some of the things that Danielle brought up earlier this morning in terms of representing diverse voices and having that intercultural lens on our General Council executive.
Okay, thank you. Now, Lauren, were you there? I'm sorry, you kept standing back, so I kept thinking, no, you're there just to be supportive. But microphone 3.
I wasn't entirely sure either. Lauren Hodson, Toronto Conference. I am speaking in favor of keeping in the line about the size and committing to a smaller executive. However, I really commend the Sessional Committee for what we find on their report, page 14, SC1, and saying that many of these issues are issues of implementation. So I'm just conscious that the major issue that it seems that we are talking about is smaller executive or not, and if we do strike out the size, if instead we could replace it with a commitment to a smaller executive if that is indeed the wish of this court.
Okay. What I'm hearing is in a moment we're going to test the yellow that got up there, and then we're going to test the size question. And so I think I'm going to hear from the 2 people at the mics, 5 and then 2. And have you got a procedural question, Matthew?
Not really, no.
Then, no.
Okay.
Well, wait then. I'm 5. Hold on, 5.
Vic Weaves, Saskatchewan Conference. I would speak in favor of the smaller executive. I think all of the research that we did indicated that efficiency for any group had to be small. Otherwise, you get too many conversations. Recognizing that those people then have to have a commitment to do that multicultural lens and trying to make sure they understand other people. The other thing I would just say, in Saskatchewan, we cut our executive by more than 50%. We get all of the business done in less time, and I think the decisions are just as good as they were previously.
Thank you very much. Microphone 2.
Judith Evenden, Bay of Quinte Conference. I'll add to what Paul said. In Bay of Quinte, we've been doing that process of the commissioners meeting with our reps to the executive for a number of years now. But what I came up here to say is I hope whatever way we do this, I would encourage us to get away from the model of a chairperson being the one that reports to the other body. That it takes good people away from wanting to be chair because they automatically have to be now part of another body, and they're not necessarily the best person to go and to sit and listen. So if somebody is designated by that group to say, I'm the listener, and I'm going to take what I hear to the body that you've asked me to go to, rather than so it's a person rather than a position that we're sending on.
Okay, thank you very much. Microphone 1, it looks procedural.
It is procedural, Bill McCausland, Bay of Quinte. We should be reminded that in this particular point, as far as the piece that has been added and we're looking at testing the court on, we're talking about the executive. The executive already does all of the stuff that is in the work of the denominational council. It's already responsible for that. It already has all those relations implied in it. There's no need to be adding this piece. It is duplication. It is adding more to what we already have.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to now take us up to the yellow. We now have it. This was to be added at the very beginning, so it would be a decision-making body of the United Church between meetings of the Denom Council, living into covenantal relationship and mutually accountable. Up a little bit, please. The yellow. It's the yellow I want. Thank you. Living accountable with the denominational council, regional council, and communities of faith. Are you warm to having that included in there? Yeah, basically you are. There are some people hesitant, but there she goes. Okay. So the next key concept is, no. Stay right there. Size. And what I'm hearing is that there's been a good discussion about the size of the executive and voices that are at the table or the smaller size, which does a lot of consultation. I'm trying to decide what the best question is. I'm going to test I'm going to bring in that size bullet a fixed number between 12 and 18 numbers with the exact number set by the Denom Council. So that gives some flexibility, and we won't deal with the rest yet at all, but we're talking about size. Are you basically in favor of having that in? So yellow or warm or cool to that? Mostly warm to a small executive. So that will stay in. Now, what I heard was not to get into the details of the membership, because there was some discussion saying it may not work that way and we need to have competencies, etc. And so I would wonder about having that, but I'm looking at now microphone 3.
Could the size be determined by the number of regional councils? So we leave unstated at this point until the number of regional councils has been established.
At the moment, what we have actually said is to decide by the denominational council 12 to 18. So I'm going to say that's a thought, and I'll leave it with the business table. Microphone 3. Nice to see you, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks. I thought I'd drop in.
Yeah.
From London Conference, even. I'm wondering if these problems might be solved if, at the executive level, we had a rotational membership that was drawn on a regular basis from the larger denominational council, and therefore there would be a number of different views rotationally passing through the executive.
I would take that as a piece of wisdom and refer it to the General Secretary and the executive as they consider how to put together the smaller executive. Thank you very much. Yeah. What I'm going to ask now is that what you see crossed out is detail. Oh, microphone 3.
Phyllis Buchner, Hamilton Conference. I respectfully ask that consideration be given to United Church Women as a part of the new executive. There were 10 or so proposals that came through, and as a group, as a network, we represent about 30,000 women within the United Church. And so, moderator, I respectfully ask that that be considered. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have some wording that would be able to go in there?
I can provide that for you.
And I was just going to say, it's important to have it raised because it did come forward very strongly. If, in fact, this group wants to move on, leaving the proposal as we see it, then it leaves those issues as to membership to be dealt with as the Sessional Committee, I think, has suggested, and we'll get to their proposal in a minute, and they specify that United Church Women be one of the considerations in determining, without making a decision here, that be lifted up as one of the considerations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 3.
Yeah, SC1, you'll find our
Yes.
information on that.
And we're going to we will get to that, though not this morning, but this afternoon. Microphone 4.
John Young, Bay of Quinte. As I'm listening to the comments, it seems to me something that's floating here really relates to the question of, is it the denominational council that determines its own executive, or are the members of the the executive drawn from the regions in some fashion? I think that's a significant principle. From where is that membership drawn? And I'm suggesting we might want to test that, if you're understanding my point. It's not like one from every region, but I'm hearing comments that say we want the region to generate the members of the executive, and I'm hearing other comments to say, no, we want that. Like, this proposal is to draw it from the denominational council. It's that we'd meet here, we'd vote for 8 or 10. Another way is the regions in some groupings would populate the executive. I just think that's a principal question.
It's a big question, and I think it is one of the things that in the Sessional Committee's wisdom they were leaving for another day, but we have heard some good discussion about it. What I think if this body goes today with what we're seeing not crossed out at this point, then it simply lays out that a range of number and leaves those other decisions for later, but I certainly agree that that is a very live question.
In some ways, it's picked up in the fourth bullet that has been crossed out. Lay members and reps, order of ministry elected by denominational based on regional council nominations and the need for named competencies. That's starting to already spell out an awful lot. And the question is, do we want to spell that out, or do we trust the sessional committee? I think. So what I'd like to test is, are you warm to living with having crossed out all the material below the yellow before we get to authority? You know what? You are. But what we have also clearly said to the body that will be considering the makeup is that these considerations are very important, that regional conversation, and that goes back to living into covenantal relationship and mutual accountability. I think that also picks up that same need to be sure that the executive is a body in which we have trust and connects with regions and has named competencies and is deeply committed to the process of consultation. Friends, you've done great. You really, really have. As far as I see, we have about one or two other key pivotal issues that we need to deal with in principle. And we have 3 hours of time this afternoon, some of which I'm hoping will be used for one order of ministry. But I think we're on schedule, which means you're going to just have a worship celebration tonight, all on its own. I'm not guaranteeing it, but it's working. It looks like we're going to be decent with ourselves for the evening. So, thank you for this work, and now we will move into a time of celebrating our partnership of full communion with the United Church of Christ, and I call on those who are responsible for helping us celebrate to come forward and lead us in that celebration.
Friends, yes.
Hey folks, we've done some hard work. This is a time still to be focused and offer our attention in this moment of celebration.
Friends, yesterday we made history. We entered a new chapter in the life of our church. And this morning, we want to acknowledge that, and we want to give an opportunity to hear from our friends in the United Church of Christ. Just to let you know that on October the 17th, we will be having the formal celebration of this agreement and the signing of the agreement in Niagara Falls, Ontario. We will, in the next few weeks, be making available to both churches prayer for full communion that we hope all our congregations will use sometime close to October the 17th, either the Sunday before or the Sunday on the 18th. We will be inviting those of you who are in driving distance to come to Niagara Falls for that historic celebration. So you will be receiving information in your package. We will also be making available online copies of the liturgy that we will use for that celebration. And we trust that one of the things that would happen as we begin to enter in that relationships is that congregations and conferences may begin to develop relationships and connections. And we've already began to think through about how we may do mission together. It is my pleasure and our pleasure this morning to ask the Reverend Geoffrey Black, who is the former President and General Minister of the United Church of Christ. And one of Geoffrey's goals in his role as President and General Minister was to begin to develop and formulate conversations and agreements with partner churches. So we want to welcome Geoffrey and ask him to share a bit with us this morning from the perspective of the United Church of Christ, USA.
Well, thank you very much for your warm welcome, friends. It's a joy to be with you and to come to this moment and to see this work that the working group that was established with people from the United Church of Canada and people from the United Church of Christ USA, to see that work come to fruition and to have it fulfilled at the General Synod of the United Church of Christ and here at this General Council gathering with affirmative votes in both places. I want to thank you, first of all, for welcoming me so warmly these last few days. I've had wonderful conversations all around the house with many of you, and the expression of hospitality and warmth for me and for Karen and for Campbell has been just heartwarming, and we really appreciate that. This morning, I have the pleasure, and it is a pleasure indeed, because as Michael mentioned, one of the things that I wanted to see us accomplish during my tenure as General Minister and President was the establishment of some kind of formal relationship with the United Church of Canada. When we started this journey, I didn't realize, I couldn't see that this day would come so soon, but it's here, and it is indeed a joy to my heart. This morning, again, it is indeed a simple pleasure, one of the simple joys of life, to know that we are in full communion with you, that we have a partner on this continent that shares so much of the core values that we have and shares so much of the approach to the world in mission and in ministry that we have. We think that we're probably more than cousins. We're at least first cousins. So definitely want to affirm that. I was amazed at the General Synod of the United Church of Christ when the vote was taken and you saw that video clip and one of our delegates stood at the microphone and invited the Synod to join in singing "O Canada." My amazement was that they knew all the words. You should have heard that. I mean, when I was sitting there, and I've told some friends here already, when that happened, I said to myself, oh, this is going to be a solo. He has the script in front of him. But as it turned out, the whole Synod sang, and they sang with verve. They were really into the singing of this song. And then I was mystified yesterday when I got here and the vote was taken, and people here, before the vote was taken actually, people sang the Star-Spangled Banner, and they knew all the words. Well, so I said to one of the people at my table, how could this be? How could this be? And he said, it's about hockey. I didn't. So I guess that's going to be one of the benefits for me in engaging in this full communion relationship, is that I'm going to learn how to appreciate hockey. I guess this morning, though, I asked myself, what would the people of the UCC want me to share with you? What would they want me to say to you today as we gather in this General Council? And I think that judging just from the comments that I've heard from people as I move around the United Church of Christ leading up to the General Synod, and certainly in the aftermath, after many more knew about the process, knew some of our partners, knew that many people met Nora and Michael at the Synod, that there were just many comments that were coming in my direction, and I'm sure Karen and Campbell heard much of the same. And what I think they would want you to know today from me is that there is a deep, there has been for a long time, a deep yearning for this relationship. People have said to me time and time again, it's about time. I've often wondered why we aren't in full communion with that church. And so there is a deep appreciation for this relationship and affirmation of this relationship. The second thing is that I think people would want me to share with you their hope, a deep hope for a shared future together in some fashion or form, that there is real hopefulness, that this beginning will lead to something wonderful. That hope exists. And finally, I think they want me to share with you the joy that has come to all of us thus far because of the possibilities that lay ahead for both of our churches. That is the kind of thing that I'm hearing from members of the UCC, from leadership circles to people in local churches about this relationship. Especially at one time in my tenure in leadership in the United Church of Christ, I was the conference minister of the New York Conference. And I hear from friends in New York all the time. And those up around the Black River St. Lawrence Association are particularly excited about the fact that they've been kind of courting each other across the river for years. And now, to know that we're family, well, this is just something wonderful to them. So this builds possibilities for the future, and they are certainly excited about that. We believe that the possibilities for our future together are unlimited. Only the Holy Spirit knows what they are, and certainly we believe that the Holy Spirit is with us, driving and empowering us to make a future together. I know that the commitment and the imagination and the creativity that exists within all of us, within both of our churches, make that future together a real, tangible possibility. We all share in an aspiration to live that future with hope, with creativity, with our energy that is coming from the depths of our hearts, inspired by the Holy Spirit of God. That is what we hold on to. That is what drives this relationship for us, and we believe it drives it for you. And so we again say thank you for welcoming us into your home, and we welcome you into ours as cousins, sisters, and brothers, all in the faith of Jesus Christ. Thank you again.
I'm going to invite you to stay standing as you're able. And for us to pray together as we begin this new journey, mindful that as we later on today will begin a new relationship with a new moderator, the United Church of Christ also began a new relationship with its new president and general minister. And to pray that together we may begin to find those places of mission and ministry that God will call us to do together because we are not alone. Let us pray. Gracious and Holy One, we give you thanks for this time of new beginnings, of new opportunities. We thank you that you have brought these two communions together to seek to explore and to live into your mission of healing and reconciliation, of life, of wholeness for the whole creation. We pray for the empowerment of your Spirit. We pray for discernment of opportunities to be together. And we pray that you would strengthen our respective leadership as they begin to build relationship and to seek the mission that you have called us to do. May our world come a bit closer to experiencing what it means that God cares deeply and passionately for it because of the ministry of our common life together. For we pray in the name of Jesus our Lord. Amen.
I invite the friends of the court to come up and share with us just a couple of announcements. And I would ask the musicians to get into place. I'm hoping they might be able to lead us in a sung grace, unless that is already in place. I don't think so. So music would be a lovely way to send us out, but a few announcements and some celebrations.
Too much kitchen birdie. How's she going? Okay. Yeah, you did. I'll tell you in private, Mr. Moderator. Just, I'll give some announcements from, especially from our local arrangements here first. If you have lost something, there are some items in the lost and found, from jackets to water bottles. And I do know, I think there was a found, and it's in the business office, there is a bank card, a debit card. So please contact Shirley Welsh. Something here that was lost, which now has been found. Other things found are at the information desk on your way to the kitchen. Children from West Haven Camp can be met near the local arrangements table over here in the corner when they arrive at approximately 7 p.m. this evening. The bookstore is closing this evening following worship, and you are advised to pick up your items and books that you have on layaway at the bookstore. Also, we're continuing to take donations for carbon footprint, and I will say we don't have very many donations, so, and also the dishcloths. There are still some dishcloths left. We're gonna have clearance sale today. Today they're 4 for $5. Lois Wilson, she here, still here in the court? Lois, I know Lois, Lois was at the last General Council that was held here in Newfoundland and Labrador Conference in 1964. Are there any others who were here, we're at General Council in 1964. I will tell you that was a wonderful year, but I was just a baby. So. Yep. I'll get you birthdays after. If anyone would like any pins, they're in, I haven't got a clue where they were put, over here somewhere. Anyone want any of those lapel pins? There are plenty. Any particular town or all the towns, there's plenty of pins. Go fill your boots. And again, one last reminder, you have to check with transportation if you haven't already done so at the transport table, again, on your way to lunch.
Checkout is at 11 o'clock, and the residents will store your bags if you are having a later departure. So for those who are going off around the town tomorrow, please make sure your keys are returned and your luggage is at the residence, which is the same place that we registered. The president-elects and leading elders are invited to join together for lunch today. Pick up your bag, go to the curling rink, but not as far as the carnival. Now we have a number of mission and service funds. If you haven't gone to the spiritual experience, it's open in the Canada House, which is up those stairs behind the clock there, until 1:30 today. There is a laptop that's set up stage right at the charging station, which has a default to the donation page for the mission and service. And it will be set up there right through worship. So you have choices for this evening's worship. You can put all your loose change on the plate. You can do a quiet offering, which just means you get a tax donation because you've written on that little piece of paper, or you can do it through the computer. The choice is yours, but we invite you to be generous with your donations to mission and service. And all those who are planning to take the mission and service bus on Saturday morning, please meet Ruth at the information desk at the beginning of supper tonight. Yeah, we have, what's this? There are blank travel forms that can be picked up at the information desk and the business office, and there will be trays in both those places to drop them off. But if you leave with your business travel form, you can either scan it and send it in, or you can put it in the mail. Breakfast and lunch are scheduled for tomorrow, but only for those who were already scheduled to be staying here. And that does not include visitors or those who are driving. And if you need more information about what you're entitled to Saturday or Sunday, find Shirley Welsh. Yeah, you have two birthdays?
And we have the anniversary? Yeah. Okay. We have one anniversary that was 2 days ago on August the 12th, and that was Eric and Gloria Miles, who many of you may know from Transport, who had, their 43rd wedding anniversary. If you are left here on Sunday evening, they said to say, you're out of luck, he's taking her out for dinner. Jean Bethune. Where's Jean? Table 56. Where's Jean? I understand you have a birthday today. Happy birthday. No. And Linda Stonehouse, who is the co-chair of local arrangements. Linda's birthday is tomorrow. Now, Linda is a dear friend of mine, so I won't tell you how old she is, but I will tell you, in about a month's time, she'll get paid.
So, as we said yesterday, we can't sing happy birthday, and I'm now incognito so that the language police from Quebec, nor the ones who are tracking what music we're using, can find me. I did get a message from Australia saying that the General Secretary would visit me in jail if I actually got there. But we have the words in French so that you could all join us in singing this celebration. So, we can't do that one either. Oh, good grief. Alors, bonne fête mes amis, bon anniversaire. And somebody come up with a new song that we can sing. so that we can celebrate. Oh, we can do that.
Halle, halle.
All right.
Okay.
Halle, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Okay, we'll have to sing that again because we just got a notice. Evelyn Broadfoot's birthday is tomorrow. She will be 39 tomorrow? Sure. So let's sing that one more time so that we include Evelyn in that. Hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah.
Happy birthday, happy birthday.
Now, okay, what's this? What about dinner on Saturday? No, I believe you're on your own. It says breakfast and lunch is the notice. Si tu veux manger, samedi dîner, souper, samedi souper, trouver un ami. Okay? I'm sure you have friends, Bill. Yes, it seems you're on your own. But talk to Shirley if you want more.
And they might even buy you dinner, Bill.
Oh. Okay. I have been asked to close up here in prayer. Just to let you know, we've had prayer requests for the explosion in Tianjin in China, which is a northern city, one of their most industrial centers, where there was a huge explosion yesterday, I believe. There are 50 dead, which includes 12 firefighters and 36 still missing, and there are over 700 people injured. In Burundi, there is civil unrest, and Felix, who is our Francophone representative on the General Council Executive, or will be once we swear in the new executive, has family there for whom he is very concerned, and others. Jimmy Carter has been diagnosed with cancer, and Cheryl Ann, the executive secretary from London Conference, will be leaving us, if she hasn't left already. She is leaving to attend a funeral on Saturday of an extended family member. And from the All Native Circle Conference, Donald Little received news this morning of the death of his Aunt Judy in Winnipeg from complications in undergoing dialysis treatment. So I would just ask that we take time for prayer. Loving Creator, for the blessings of life and the possibilities of each new day, we give you thanks. And we hold in our hearts those who are struggling to accept the finality that you call us home, and that there is illness that pervades, and that there is civil unrest, and there is violence, and there are tragedies around the world, things beyond your control, but that you never stop loving us and giving us the strength and support that we need in trying times. So we lift up the family, Cheryl Ann's family, as they gather to grieve, Donald Little's family as they gather to grieve for Judy. Many people who will grieve and pray for Jimmy Carter and for all that he has given to the world, and for Patty Rex, who is also suffering from cancer. We pray for the unrest in Burundi and for the many who are affected by explosions in China, and we ask that you wrap them in your loving arms, dear God, that those who are close may be supportive, and those of us who are far away may hold them in our hearts and never forget how blessed we are to live in a safe and peaceful environment where we can speak our minds and share our hugs. Guide us and bless us, O God, to be all that you would have us be for your whole world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Grace? Just before Grace, I just want to tell our choir friends that I think since we're running behind, we'll run our choir song at the start of dinner tonight, okay? So choir, here at the start of dinner at 6. Thank you.
God bless to us our bread, and give bread to all those who are hungry, and hunger for justice to those who are fed. God bless to us our bread. Oh, Dieu bénit notre Père, donne-nous paix sur de justice à ceux qui ont de paix. Dieu bénit notre Père. Bendice, Señor, nuestro pan. Y da pan a los que tienen hambre y hambre de justicia los que tienen. Bendice, Señor, nuestro pan.
So you're blessed into lunch. Enjoy that time, and we will see you back here at 1:20 for singing, and we will have a celebration of our mutual recognition of ministries at 1:30. So I'm encouraging you not to be late, even though I've taken half an hour of your lunch away from you. Go in peace.
Paper.